All right, ladies and gentlemen, fellow decoders around the world, wherever you may be. My name is Logan. I'm going to be part of your tour guide. We also have another tour guide in here, and the great Jordan over at Waters Above. This is podcast number 18. And see, we love doing the incognito and coming out of nowhere because weren't expecting this. So when you get this, you'll be like, oh, yeah, 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 you and Jordan. So we've had a lot of great responses towards us both. And I just want to say to everybody listening here, thank you so very much for all the support over all these years for both my community and Jordan's community. I know we do both greatly appreciate it. So Jordan, my friend, love to have you back on again. Or love having you back on again, number 18. Let's get this party started, man.
100%. Really excited to reconnect, even though we were just talking a couple weeks ago, right? Us three, me, you, and Archaics. That was a really dope time. Really had a great time chatting, getting everyone's inputs, insights, and then seeing his OFIS program was pretty cool too.
Totally. And you're embedded into that. So that was even more badass.
Yeah, I'm really grateful for him considering, some of my art into it. But it would be great to see hands-on what it's like plugging in some dates, playing around with it. I'm really excited to get a little beta test whenever it's out. I'm not sure if you've heard any updates, but I think he said something about it was supposed to be this past weekend, but I'm not sure if it was just people in his community or
Yeah. I don't
public
know.
or
I was actually he's got his event coming up in Houston on this December 7th. I was gonna go, but
Mhm.
I have obligations here and I can't. So I was gonna show up. But I'm just gonna go there, man. I wanna like when I got to go meet with him in San Diego, he was so generous with his time with me. And he sat down and showed me his numbers and all the systems and stuff like that. And it just wasn't enough time, to spend because he was being pulled in different directions. But it was awesome, and I want to do that again. So I think maybe I'll have another event. I'll show up there.
Yeah, that'd be dope. Yeah, I remember I think people took the beginning of that podcast the wrong way when we were kind of having
Yeah,
fun about the microphone quality.
yeah, they totally took it the wrong way.
Yeah, we were just having fun, man. I think, the main point that I was trying to make was that I'd rather someone focus on the art than invest $1,000 into the easel and paintbrushes.
Yeah,
That was my bigger point. Like, invest your piranha into the art, and that's clearly what he does, So
yeah,
that was the main point of it all. I was actually complimenting him, but I think it got spun into another direction. But I know
yeah. We're
he knew
just
what I
being
meant.
dudes busting chops, man. He didn't take it the wrong way, but yeah, you had some of the people in the comments that were just like thinking we're totally serious. Like, why are you guys making fun of him?
No
But
way.
anyway, yeah. But I think
Yeah,
he got
but
a
that
he had
was
a
great.
microphone in his last podcast, a couple of podcasts ago. It sounded great.
Awesome.
I
Yeah,
commented on it. I'm like, yeah, man.
awesome.
Yep.
Yeah, that's really great to hear.
Yeah. It was great to hear. No pun intended. We love you, Jason. It's all good, man.
Yeah, and there's so much going on in the world stage right now, man. Like, I mean, that was really the important reason for us to connect right now
Yeah.
before this selection. And I'm sure you've had a lot of people contacting you, people in your community, just in general, and asking you for your thoughts. I would love to know, like, maybe a brief summary of some of your findings, and we could kind of get like the exoteric US election thing out of the way and then take it
Yeah.
from there.
Yeah. Let's address the elephant in the room here, right? I mean, one of
Hmm.
the reasons why we came together, ladies and gentlemen, is Jordan was interested in talking about this very topic, as is I was. So let's talk about this selection process, and I'll just give you a brief overview. I mean, I told my
Hmm.
community on my last what's your question a week, I think it was a week ago. I had said that if I had to pick, I would select Kamala that they're going to put in there. But when I go and I look at the card system is what I've been using to get the Super Bowl winners. It's like a 50-50 split, man, with Trump
Hmm.
versus Kamala. It's very challenging. Even astrologically, it's a very challenging uh decision to make on who they're going to select in there. I mean, she is the 60th. It is the 60th presidential, and she is 60 years old. So that nods to her right there. And she is the King of Hearts, and the Hebrew year right now is the King of Hearts. So it's just really challenging. What have you got? What do you see?
Yeah, I think that was kind of the thing that I got to with my decode of the 50-50 split sort of thing. Like a lot of my decode kept coming back to that over and over, where it's like I have this energy over here and then I have energy that cancels it out. And
Yep.
then I get energy over here and then I have energy that cancels it out. And that's actually very similar to the last Super Bowl, not the one that recently just happened, but the one that was before that, where I actually met you and we did some collaborations on.
Yep.
And it was just wild to watch that all go down, and it effectively was like a last minute win for the Chiefs against the Eagles.
Yep.
And fast forward 1 year later, we just had another Super Bowl with the Chiefs, and they played against the 49ers, and it was a rematch of the game that happened in the year 2000.
Yep.
And that was a big piece of my decode that made me select who I believe will win, which I think it will be Trump. And the reason why is because Kamala Harris is the 49th vice president,
Okay.
and she's from Oakland, which is the San Francisco Bay Area.
Yep.
And she became the 49th vice president through Biden on the year of that selection where the Chiefs beat the 49ers, right, leading into C19. And then here she is running for president in the year uh, that they lost again against the Chiefs in a rematch. And the score is pretty obvious too, with the 22 second overtime ever in Super Bowl history. And the first game they played back in 2020, another 2-2, was on February 2nd, the 2-2 Gregorian date. So it's just packed with the number two. Whether you look at it from just the duality perspective, which I believe we could both agree that's what an election is. It's just a red pill, blue pill,
Yep.
conservative, liberal, right, left, Democrat, Republican. And that's exactly what this is. So all the code has a lot of that duality, and I think that's why a lot of the energy is canceling it out. But considering that this recent Super Bowl did go into overtime, that wouldn't shock me if we had these election results be delayed. And then the Oakland or San Francisco Bay Area kind of leaning part of the code doesn't make it to the end for whatever reasons. But one of the other things that I thought of, and this is now again theoretical, but it does have some connections back to his first election that he won in 2016, was the fact that he lost by the popular vote, right? But then he won by electoral votes.
Yep.
And it's just interesting that this will be his second time running against a female. And I believe there was only one other time in history that there was a female running for president, but it was like over 100 years ago. And it was irrelevant compared to what we have going on in the world stage show today. So that's just like the final thing to wrap it up with is there may be some connection to she could win by the electoral votes, but lose by the popular vote. And then
Right.
that way it's a perfect mirror of what happened with him, where he
Right.
beat Hillary on electoral votes. And then if that was to be the case this time around, I believe the Patriots, the Trump supporters would not be having it. They would be screaming from the rooftops.
Sure.
And that also synchronizes with Super Bowls as well, because the first Super Bowl to ever go into overtime was the Patriots against the Falcons.
Mm.
And it happened just days after he got inaugurated in 2017. It's
Mm.
a perfect script. So both Super Bowls in the history of their existence to go into overtime are directly tied to Trump presidencies or presidential elections.
Mm. Interesting. Those are amazing connections, man. I mean, you got those memorized, dude. So that's awesome when you have them memorized like that. You know?
You have a pretty wild memory,
Yeah, yeah, no doubt. Well,
probably from being a musician.
yeah. Well, you don't read music, right? So you have to have a good memory.
Yeah, you have to remember all the parts.
Yeah. Astrologically, it's very interesting because on November 5th, which, this could spill over because as you said, it may take days
Hmm.
if this thing gets really chaotic. But on November 5th, at that night, I mean, Venus is in Ophiuchus, man.
Hmm.
Yeah, and then, the 47th presidential election is by the card system is ruled by Uranus, and Uranus is in Taurus, and Taurus is ruled by Venus. So, and Trump is 78, and his card chart, his solar spread is ruled by Venus. So this is why it's so difficult to select who I would think it would be. But again, I mean, I had said Kamala just because I think it will cause a lot more chaos, and I don't think the chaos is done yet. I think Trump, if they select Trump to go into office, I think there's going to be a lot of people cheering. The markets obviously would probably increase. Everybody would think it's all groovy and gravy.
Yeah.
Life would be like back to normal with the flow of money and currency and all that stuff. But I just don't know if that's going to be the scenario that's going to be put into play.
Hmm. Yeah, it seems that there is this weird, I don't want to say euphoria stage necessarily, but there is this weirdness to moving into the year of the snake historically,
Yeah.
especially for the United States, where if you go back to 1941, which was the year of the snake that the US entered that war in the last minutes of 1941 because of the Pearl Harbor attack, well, I can see that he would be the perfect person to have in posture for that type of year to replay for us. Because this war that's happening right now, I mean, we all know the relationship that the United States has with Daddy Zion, you know? I mean, if
Yep.
you're not aware of this, it's time to get a less fluffy pillow. So this is important to realize, but the reason we're not in it just yet, I think, has to do with the script. And the script is US is going to enter it in the year of the snake, just like all the other years that we've had them enter war. And I don't need to get into that today because me and you have talked about this so many times, but just to get that out there, that idea, you bring up that you're expecting more chaos and less peace in regards to like the state of our experience as Americans or on the world stage. Like I would love to know some more of your thoughts about that because you said you don't think the chaos is over.
Well, I mean, I say that when you look at it astrologically,
Hmm.
following sidereal astrology, which is to me the true map of the stars,
Hmm.
Pluto, you get a lot of these people saying, oh, Pluto's in Aquarius. Well, if you look at the true map of the stars, that is not accurate whatsoever.
Hmm.
Pluto right now is actually moved back into Sagittarius, and it will start to move out of its um, retrograde motion, if you will, back into Capricorn. And as it moves through Capricorn until the year 2040, Capricorn represents law, government, state, real estate, money, and all that stuff. So, and Pluto during the election, Pluto is directly across from Mars. Mars is going to be in the sign of Cancer. It's literally they're literally square, not it's not squaring. They're opposite of one another, and then you have Jupiter opposite of Venus, and those two really kind of get along. So there's a lot of oppositions going on, and the energy's feeding off of that kind of stuff. And Saturn is in Aquarius, so that's a big marker as well. That's social circles, and perhaps the marker of the upheaval of social circles, which could be spelling out revolution.
Hmm.
The revolution. I think that if there's some fiasco with the voting and all that, there could be a lot of markers that could drive the economy to move into a revolution, civil war. There's all these things are on the table, and we've been talking about this. I mean, we had the let's talk about um, the crash. You and I did a podcast on that 2 years ago. I thought it was going to happen last year,
Hmm.
but that hasn't occurred yet. Will it occur? I think the ceiling's so high right now, it has to come crashing down. So.
Yeah, well, that was, I mean, nothing against your great work, but as a market analyst and professional trader, the reason why I wasn't anticipating the bubble to pop completely just yet was because of the connection to Jubilee.
uh,
And that was a very big piece of my work since, I started my channel before I even met you. So that is a big layer. And then when I saw the event on October 7, 2023, effectively after what I was calling the Jubilee is over, that was a signal to me that, okay, that was the true Jubilee. The fact that they waited and waited and waited till the anniversary of the Yom Kippur War, the 50th anniversary. But what we're in right now, bro, is an absolute like it's an everything bubble that we've never seen. The scale is wild. And a lot of people, the retail investors, the general public, do not have money to put in this market, but it still keeps going up.
yeah.
So it's very, very fascinating how these institutions such as BlackRock and Vanguard, et cetera, they're front running. I mean, they are the market. The retail investor is not even a fourth string quarterback on the team anymore, you know? So whenever this bubble does pop, it's going to be an interesting thing to see how it all goes down. And we could definitely dedicate a part of this podcast to that maybe later on, or another podcast to that, because I very much feel if I had to dial in when this quote unquote bubble will pop, it's next year. And it's the connections to this World War III narrative, this
Yep.
World War III expansion.
Yep.
But what I must also say is that doesn't mean that it's an everything crash, even though we're in an everything bubble. Okay, that's a very, very, very important thing to delineate. So we will see sectors crash, and they, because of their market cap or because of their influence on a particular, you know, ripple effect of other sectors, we will see correction. But
Yeah.
housing, I think, still has like a very weird opportunity right now in comparison to 2008. And the reason I bring that up is because we haven't really seen the tokenization of real estate yet, which is something that's going to happen. All things will be on the blockchain, and that will be a huge investment opportunity for
Yeah.
people. So, there's so much to lay out here. And I know you're the perfect person, you're the perfect person to talk to about a lot of this stuff. Because if I ever share dates with you or time frames, you could give me my the astrological connections to it in your own way, and it's amazing. I love it. But if I had to dial down times, I see a trigger event happening in March, April 2025, particularly tied to that total lunar eclipse we'll have on March 14th, the
Yep.
Pi Day eclipse, and also Mercury stations retrograde the following day, which is very important for markets. But since we're keeping our conversation broad here, the other trigger event I feel will be the lunar eclipse of September 7th. And that's numerologically, that's pretty amazing with the 7-7, the septem being seven.
Yeah.
So, what's your take on those, or if without my influence of what I've just said, and the fact that we're talking about like potential civil unrest, upheaval, the byproduct of what could happen with this election, even
Yeah.
if you wanted to consider markets, what trigger event timeframes do you see for next year, or maybe not even next year, for any particular year that's caught your attention?
Yeah. Well, the big marker that I see astrologically is Uranus. Now, remember, Uranus rules Aquarius, and Uranus was discovered in 1781. And when you subtract 1781 from 2025, you're going to get 244. And what's so very interesting about that number is that if you've ever played the game Pac-Man, well, there are 244 pellets on the board. And when all the pellets get eaten, you level up. The game changes. And Uranus right now is exactly in the same sign it was discovered in. It's in the sign of Taurus. And Taurus is the bull, and Taurus is money and Venus and the stock market. And we have Jupiter there right now. And I think, Jupiter usually expands everything. So I have already mentioned this with my community. I feel like Jupiter's there to expand and cause hyperinflation. And there's also something to consider that when Uranus was discovered, you had these major political revolutions. You had the American Revolution in 1776, 1777, and then you had the French Revolution. So these time frames spell out Uranus because Uranus is very chaotic. It's an electrical source. And it's a primordial. So when you look at mythologies, Uranus does not fall into the category of any Olympian or Titan, as does the other celestials, Saturn being the Titan and all the rest being Olympians. So you're now getting somebody who's put into office, in this case, astrologically, where Uranus comes into play, and it's now back in the sign that it was discovered in, Taurus. It's there with Jupiter, its grandson. And I think these are huge markers for the revolution. And I think 2025 and Pac-Man, the ridiculousness of a video game, but 244 pellets. 2025 marks the 244 year anniversary of Uranus' discovery.
Mhm. Powerful, man. That's an amazing connection. And
Yeah.
one thing that could be brought up into this to dial down the months, if you go to when the American Revolution happened, allegedly, and the same thing with the Civil War, with the American Civil War, they both started in April.
Yeah.
So I believe there's a reason for that. No matter what anyone believes, my take on the true new year would be closer to that vernal equinox. So
Yep.
as the sun pushes um, through Pisces in sidereal, that's kind of the trigger point of what I'm calling the true New Year, not the January 1st exoteric Gregorian New Year. But I think it has something to do with that. And it also makes a lot of sense now when you look at it from that vantage point, why we had the C19 event in March and why the dot-com bubble peaked in March of the year 2000. And there's so many other great examples. I mean, even just this year in 2024, Bitcoin topped in March 13th, 2024. And what's so important about March 13th is it's the 73rd day of the year, and Bitcoin's only daily close of the entire year so far was 73K on that exact day.
Mm,
So
wow.
there's a script that's running here because 73, 21st prime number, 21 comes back to Saturn.
Mhm.
There's so many things we could do with that code too. I love the numbers. I know you do too. But that April month is powerful because next year, that'll be Satoshi Nakamoto's 50th anniversary, 50th year. Of course, Satoshi's a mythological character.
Uh,
But the reason I bring this up now is because I wanted to ask you and shout out to somebody in my community. I forgot who it was. They sent me this information and I have never heard of it before, but it's the Vatican coming out calling 2025 the Jubilee year for them. So I don't know if that's the
uh,
Catholic Jubilee, but have you heard of this?
no, no, I
Okay,
haven't at all.
great. So if you go on, they have a couple of websites that break this down, and there's even one that has a countdown timer. Um, and it's saying that it'll start on the Gregorian New Year 2025. And now I'm taking this with a grain of salt right now for my work because I believe that the Hebrew calendar has a little bit more power over this market. That's just my perspective. I like how the Hebrew calendar also considers lunar cycles and the moon.
Yep.
But that's just a side note. But I find it fascinating that they're calling 2025 this Jubilee year. And then we have that connection to Year of the Snake with the war. And then we have that connection to the month of April and the fact that we have our pair of eclipses or eclipse season in March into April of 2025. And I've looked through every single year of the snake in the stock market, and there's a connection where that's a big trigger point for a major market move. And you know this more than anyone. They can't just crash the market randomly. They need to blame something.
Yep.
They always have something to blame. So there needs to be a scapegoat. And I want to throw this idea out for you because I know you already said you think Kamala's going to win. But if Trump does win, which is what my decode's telling me, imagine he gets hit with a March event, which will be very similar to the way his last presidency ended. And it
Right.
would be like a perfect mirror effect
Hmm.
of watching him leave on this, you know, the Fauci situation and everything that went down with the global state, with the world stage with C19 in March 2020, and then he'd be coming in, and then you have this March 2025 event at the start, be like a ripple in time. I think that'd be an interesting way to look at to perceive the script. It would make me think of like the snake eating its own tail, like an Ouroboros.
Yeah, I mean, you brought up some great points.
Of course, theoretical though.
Yeah, yeah, what Kamala has working for her, she's female, right? And if you go and do the statistics on people that vote, the women are actually the majority. In 2016, I think the women were like 60 something percent over men that were like 59%. And then 2020, the statistics were 68, 69% women and 65, 66% men. Those are not statistics that I can verify, by the way. I'm just
Wait, how is that
regurgitating.
possible? How is that possible to have 60% twice?
Well, that's what the statistics say, man.
Wouldn't it be like
68% of
60
it's
40
it's
or
68% of the eligible female voters. That's what it is.
oh,
It's
okay,
not. Yeah,
okay, okay,
I'm sorry. I
okay.
should have said
Sorry.
eligible. Yeah,
Yeah. Okay,
I
okay.
forgot that. I left that word, that big word that was important.
Hmm.
So there's more women that are voting than men, and Kamala has the edge there. If we're just looking apples to apples. So I don't know, man. Again, if there's so many ways to sling this, because yeah,
Hmm.
if they
Hmm.
select Trump and they put him in there, there will be obviously there'll be a lot of people that are happy. There will be, the Make America Great Again will surge. But what he could end up doing is start a revolution by stopping all these things that are going on that were done by the Democratic side, and then all the illegals that have been pouring into this country. Like I think that there could be that rise up of those people that are coming in feeling like those people have rights, and
Hmm.
the voting that's going to come in with them, which is irrelevant. But but there's all these factors to consider. But if they do throw Kamala in there, and there's some maybe a wedge in between the voting, and then there's a big outcry of if there's any fraud that they're going to mention, and I say if because I know AI is going to look. I say if there is any potential fraud that they're going to throw out there in the
Hmm.
scheme of things, well, that could cause a major upheaval as well. Especially if someone wins by the way of that, and it's known or at least determined or
Hmm.
put out there in the story. So it's really
I
tough, man. It's really tough to that's why I said it. I told my community, and I had said Kamala, but I'm really torn at 50-50. This is the most challenging ever from that I've looked at presidential wise.
Yeah. Well, it might be an incredibly challenging time in general to decode, and I don't say that to like cut us some slack, but where I think we could entertain how difficult it's become in regarding decoding is because now we have things like AI, and now we have all this connection to each other and all this information. So it's pooling together so much data. And I know that the elite, the apex predator, whatever you want to call them, they're just data decipherers. They're taking our sentiment from our search history, from the things that we get engaged in. People think that there's some way to be secret on the internet. Like, I've even had to expose this in regards to privacy coins with
Yep.
cryptocurrency. Like, there's nothing private on the internet, guys.
Yep.
So when they see you all so-called quote unquote truthers going over to Rumble to get your truth, you don't realize like they're onto that. They know everything you do. This is not like something you're hiding from. Okay. And the reason I bring this up is because they're taking all this data, they're compiling it all, and that's what they're using to propel us forward into whatever this so-called future is. That's my
Mhm.
opinion.
Yeah.
And I think the perfect way to orchestrate the world stage would be to know what you're working with, know the temperature in the room, right? If you're a comedian, you need to know when the joke doesn't hit, and then you got to change up you have to change up the delivery. So just think about it like this. Like in C19, when we had what was going on initially, they knew that we were eventually going to get frustrated. They knew it by our search history. They knew it by the way that we were talking on Facebook and this, that, and the third. They knew that we were awakening to some of this stuff.
That's right.
And the best thing to do in that moment, in their eyes, because they're psychopaths, is to kill a man on camera. Call it police brutality, and then tell you, we used to tell you to stay inside, but now it's completely fine to go outside if you're protesting.
Yeah.
And you could just watch the sheep go directly into the slaughter. So all I'm trying to say here is I don't think there was a human in a boardroom that was making this idea up. I think it was an advanced AI program that just pulls together all the data of what's happening on the internet now in comparison it back in the day. Obviously, you wouldn't have the data in that way. You do it in a different way. You do it through newspaper, tabloids, whatever. Cable television is different today.
Yeah.
They're just taking all of your data and they go, oh, okay, well, the AI tells them, well, this will be a good time right now to do this. And then they'll get back to frustrated again. Now you give them stimulus checks and then they'll get frustrated again. And then you do another thing and you just keep it going and going and going. It's, I think David Icke calls it the totalitarian tiptoe. I'm
Yeah.
just adding in that element of artificial intelligence. I think it's been around for a lot longer than they've allowed us access to.
Yeah.
So, that's why I think it's making decoding so tough. And that's why outcomes lately have been so fucking close.
Mm.
Everything has been so like razor thin margin close in everything, bro.
Mm.
And that's again not to cut any slack to us decoders. Like this is what I do. It's my passion. I'm not trying to make it easier for me. I actually love the difficulty. It makes it more fun.
Wow.
But it is a truth. Like if you're seeing these close calls, that's why I'm seeing the close calls. The only thing that's pushing me in the direction to make my choice is because ultimately I know everyone wants to know what I think. But at
Yeah.
the end of the day, it doesn't change my reality one bit. And I've told so many people, whatever happens with this US election, it will not change the markets as much as you might think it will change the markets because the markets are not ran by presidents. They're not ran by who becomes president. They're not ran by the day or the month of the election happening. That's all just distraction. It's static.
Hmm.
There's so many more things going on here. So if you're focusing on investing, you know, that's why a lot of my things when it comes to what's going on with my decodes, I try to pull in some other cultural aspect to make sense of it in another way, such as what I did earlier with the Super Bowls. And some people can say, well, Waters, that doesn't make any sense. Like, okay, well, I could prove so many times where we've seen synchronicities with certain things. One that I just found out quite recently was the Super Bowl of the Year of the Dragon of 2012.
Yep.
The Baltimore Ravens won. It was very, very close. Then the one before that, 2000, the Baltimore Ravens won. Then you go all the way back to 1964, which was the last year of the Wood Dragon, the year that Kamala was born. The Baltimore Colts played in that Super Bowl.
Yeah.
You can't make this shit up.
And that's Maryland. That's the
Yeah,
Virgin Maryland.
exactly.
Baltimore,
So that's
Maryland.
Baltimore. This
That's
is a
Maryland.
ritual. This is a ritual to DC, to the District of Columbia, to the light bearer.
Yeah.
So this is powerful. And it's not like that's the only way to get to that result. I just found my way to get to that result. And I know you have your ways to get to that result. And that's the beauty of this collaboration.
Yeah. Well, you're so good at the dates. I mean, you're kind of the master at the dates. You do way more than I do on the dates. You did mention the April timeframe, and you know, when I was trying to figure out who they're going to put in office,
Mhm,
I went back to because I'm using the cards, right? So I'm like, okay, well,
mhm,
what was the first date of confirming the victory of George Washington? It was on April 6th. And that card is the two of spades. And that card is the card that governed over September 11th. But that card, that's the card of duality, right? The two of
mhm,
spades. And when you count all that stuff, it's card 41. It's tied to the Elohim. The word Elohim in Hebrew equals 41. So the two of spades, which is the date tied to the first presidential unanimous victory date, is a Elohim card. And so I've had to factor that in as well. But April is a this is when, remember, Apple Computers was founded on April 1st. They were founded on April Fool's Day. Yeah.
Yeah.
So and that's right around the time of when Hugo Weaving, the Mr. Smith, he was born on April 4th, right? So like all these coincidences happen.
Mhm,
And I think it's very interesting to note these things. But talking about your AI stuff, I had postulated this in one of my videos, and I had said that maybe Saturn is just a freaking computer.
mhm,
That's it. And this is why some of the Jews, they wear the black square on their head, indicating that the pineal gland becomes the computer. And
sure.
that's why they wear it right over the fact. So Saturn being the demigod, right? The demigod being Saturn, and Saturn just may being a quantum computer, which, you and I are the same. I feel that the technology has been around a really, really long time. I mean, when I
Mhm,
decoded the computer and Alan Turing, I mean, I showed with great accuracy that this guy was supposed to create the first computer. Without question, he was part of his script. And so I go back to that and I see the organic code, but I also can contribute the artificial intelligence. When I did the news benders, have you seen that episode? I've talked about it with you before. Have you watched
No,
it?
no, no, no.
Oh, you've never watched it? Okay,
No, no.
1968. Yeah, 30-minute theater, BBC. They came out with an episode. I'll send it to you. It's 30 minutes, dude. Totally worth your watch.
Okay.
It's with Donald Pleasance, who stars. He was in the Halloween movies as Jason, Michael Myers, psychologist, the bald guy.
Mhm,
He's the main guy, and they came out with that show, and it was about the news being run by a computer. So a
mhm.
lot of people, they postulate this, and they've said
Yep.
this. This is nothing new, right? I've been thrown this a million times by so many different decoders saying, "Oh my God, this is how they forecast the news." Is they pump it into a computer and out pops simulations, and then they go with whatever simulation they probably decide upon at a round table, right? We have like 10 different scenarios and they're saying, "Okay, we're going to go with this one." So then you sprinkle the AI with the organic code because I feel the mind of mankind is not our own. So if you're going to spit out several different simulations and then you're going to make a decision upon a popular vote of a committee, which you could say it's the round table, well, now you're sprinkling in the organic code and now it's not organic. I mean, it's not artificial anymore. So I do think that there is this, this merge of those two. But overall,
Hmm.
I personally think it's organic all the way. So.
Yeah, it's going through filters.
Filters, yeah. Gradients,
Yeah.
filters, yeah.
Exactly. It's like when you're recording music, you can take a microphone, analog recording of a guitar being played, but then once you take that guitar and throw it into the digital workstation, you could then modulate that to sound like a organ. There's our apps that we now have where we can take an electric guitar and simulate it to sound like an acoustic guitar, and it'll be very close. So it's just going through filters. Something that was once quote unquote organic can now be modulated and put through some sort of simulator app to
Yeah.
be completely digital, but it's lifelike. And that's no different than the AI we're being presented with today.
Yeah, I had mentioned Saturn perhaps being this quantum computer, and that's all it is. And it's a so below of the Saturn as above. But it's very interesting because artificial intelligence, that equals 68, which is the same numerology as both world wars, right? The invasion of Ukraine, as you
Hmm.
know.
Yep.
And it's also the numerology of the five books of the Torah. The first five books of the Torah equal 68 in Hebrew numerology, not even Chaldean. The
Hmm.
original is 68. So it's very interesting that the postulation here of Saturn just being a quantum computer is on the table to discuss. And this is maybe what they use to, put in scenarios to pump out simulations.
Yeah, I mean, I like this idea because you could even bring in the element of the Matrix and look at it through the lenses of mythology. So we have the architect, right? This would be
Yep.
Uranus. This is Daddy. And Daddy makes a computer.
Yep.
Daddy makes Saturn. So Uranus makes Saturn, makes this thing that allows for what is made by that to experience what we call time or the concept of growth and decay or whatever you want to perceive. So I vibe with what you're saying. You know, the computer will outlive man, but only if the energy source is still available.
Yeah.
That's probably why a lot of the antiquitech, the stuff that is of the quote unquote old world, perhaps from ancient Egypt, Babylon, Sumeria, whatever. If there was a floppy disk per se, and obviously it would be a lot more advanced, but what fucking computer would you plug that into? You can't
Yeah.
you can't plug in a Sumerian floppy disk into a
Yeah.
goddamn MacBook.
Yeah.
It's just not going to work, guys. So like think about that. That's a big concept to just meditate on for a while as decoders and as people who are seeking truth. I don't think we have access to those computers as regular people, but we do in a sense through our consciousness, through the memories that we have, because nothing can be created nor destroyed. We're all just like the salts of the earth, and all of these minerals that we're made of, that we're comprised of, are within us. That's why, like, when you get into the esoteric wisdom, you don't need to learn outside of yourself anymore because the thing called God is always presenting itself all the time. You just never realize it, you
Yeah.
know? So one thing that I thought of, and if anyone here is has never seen the movie Leave the World Behind, there's a very important scene in the movie Leave the World Behind near the end where the daughter, this young girl, is talking to her mom as they're falling asleep and says this story about a guy who expects a flood coming and he's praying to God. I don't know the story, but I'm sure it's been told in many other movies also. And it might be a famous story. I didn't grow up religious, so I've never heard it before. I saw it in this movie, and effectively, the guy's praying to God, knows that a flood's coming, but he believes that if he just continues to believe and has faith, that he will be saved. And then a guy shows up like in a boat, and it's like, "Hey, help! Like, come over here, we'll help you." And he's like, "No, it's fine. God's got my back, right?" And then like three other things happen where people try to come and rescue and save him, and he just declines it and says, I have faith in God, I will be fine. And then he dies. And then he goes to wherever, heaven, and talks with God, allegedly. And God, he says, I believed in you, I had faith in you, what's going on? Why didn't you save me? And he says, I sent you a boat. I
Yeah.
sent you a helicopter.
Yeah.
I sent you. That shit woke me up to a realization that God is always interacting with us. Like a
Yep.
butterfly that lands on your hand is God.
Yep.
When you trip down a flight of stairs, that's God. Like I
Yep.
know you don't want to perceive it as that because the human mind wants to play the blame game and say, fuck, I fell and that's embarrassing and that sucks. And like, but when I locked into that framework of thinking, I became so much more playful and now I look at life in a whole new way. And it was from a fucking Hollywood movie. It just took that moment and for my level of consciousness at this time to click and for it to actually have utility, right?
Yep.
So now I'm like, whoa, there's a whole different way of looking at what's going on here in this simulation. In my scripted reality, I can now be much more okay with the script as it's unfolding, and I see it as every mistake is my greatest opportunity, and everything that's interacting with me is a form of what we are calling God.
Yep. Yep. I totally agree. That those are very huge points that God is falling down the stairs and the butterfly and always. And I know you are myself. I'm constantly having signs around me from the receipts, the things that I buy, to timestamps, to clocks.
Hmm.
Just the last podcast I did, and um, my last one, my last what's your question? The timestamp was there. It was and I don't this video or this podcast we're doing. I'm not gonna I'm not gonna edit it to get it to a certain outcome.
Right.
No way, you know. But there it was. I mean, I just started working on. You ever seen the movie Talladega Nights
No, I've heard of it though.
with Will Ferrell? Oh, you've never seen it before? Okay.
Mm.
Well, in that movie, it's about racing. He's a car racer, and his father like kind of leaves him as a kid, and then he shows up at his school, and he gets kicked out of the school. He comes in for like Father Sunday, and he gets kicked out. And when he's getting into the car, he tells him his name's Ricky Bobby. He said, "Ricky Bobby, if you ain't first, you're last." Right? And so I did the timestamp on that. And the timestamp it comes out to, when I show people this, I don't know how else, it comes out to yin yang, man. It comes out to the 9669. If you ain't first, you're last. If you're not black, you're white. So these timestamps in these movies, I don't know how these directors and editors are getting it this way.
Yeah.
Like, I just think it's impossible to get it exactly. And then you decode it with all these layers that we're doing as decoders, and they come out this way. So I just think that God is in everything. The universe, whatever, his spirits, and these movies are telling the story, and that Leave the World Behind movie. I mean, I mean, of course, Obama being one of the producers, him and Michelle,
Mhm.
And then the big thing on the movie cover was there's a deer there. And we know that I talked about this, is that the Skull and Bones they have a retreat on Deer Island.
Mhm.
So the stag is on that album, that cover. And I have a feeling that's what it means. And Skull and Bones is tied to the 10 of spades, which is the 10 of swords. And that's next, that's 2025. 2025 is the year of Skull and Bones. You can make book on it. The Hebrew year 5785, you add that up, that equals 2025. 2025 is tied to the black sun. You're talking about black hole sun. I mean, there's just so much relevance to 2025 and
Mhm.
2024 being the warm up to that. I think this is where we're going to get the chaos. So are they going to put Trump in as the chaos unfolds? Or are they just going to put in more democratic stuff where, and you get all these people in wheelchairs at the Senate and they're just pushing each other around, in wheelchairs. I mean, they can't go very much longer.
Yeah. Yeah, and the Trump script is a little like too good to be true in a lot of ways, and I don't want to spend too much time there, but it's like every day I'm hearing this new sensationalized like he wants to get rid of the Federal Reserve or he wants to and by the end of it I'm like, okay, well what will we be left with?
Yeah.
His opinions?
Yeah.
That sounds like I'm not pro Federal Reserve. Obviously, I'm a finance guy. Like I would never want to be taxed. I think the IRS is a fucking sham. Like everything that goes on, Treasury, it's all make believe, but it's a system to learn the rules of so that you could be better at the game.
Yeah.
That's all. I could complain about it all day, or I could study it and master it and become better at it, right? But I don't think the world is better with the Fed necessarily, but I think like handing out these big promises is a typical politician move. And I worry for the people who get a little too consumed in these big promises and they put too much faith in these outcomes and they forget at the end of the day that they're listening to a politician do what politicians do. And this Trump guy has a very savior-like quality to him, and it's no different than Elon. So it's funny how this merger has happened recently, but I know the exact reason why it's happening because this is the year of Elon. This is the year of the X, and everything that he's tied to is the X.
Yeah.
So moving into this year of the snake, we're gonna see all the duality, all the separation that's happened in this year. It's going to get very challenged, I believe, where you'll have this polarization that we've never seen before. And I think there's definitely enough to go around as we speak with what's going on with this war and what's been going on with all the other geopolitical things and the wealth gap too. But with that being said, I think in the event of a Kamala situation, which could very well be, sure, the case, I think that we might be a little too like, well, aren't we used to this and kind of over this? And that might bring so much more chaos just from that perspective. Do you
Sure.
understand what I mean?
Totally.
It's like we're sick and tired. And I'm not speaking for myself or you, but generally people are sick and tired of the same old shit.
Yeah.
So they're like, well, what is going to change? And I think that's why the Trump character, the Trump archetype, I should call him, resonates so much
Yeah.
with the American people. And also, let's just address it with the truther community. I've been blown away actually to watch just over the past couple months people say that they are awake in the same sentence that they're supporting Trump. And I'm
Yeah.
like, wait, what? So you're awake, but you support politics? I
Yeah.
don't under What are we saying here, right? But that's the power of that moment. That's the power of this uh moment in general, right? From the astrological perspective.
Sure.
People become inconsistent right now during this time of year.
Sure.
And there's so
Uh,
many other markers to prove that.
yeah. And I had mentioned this to my community on my last live, and I said, I addressed everybody, and I'm like, 99% of you, this is just the way it is. You're picking a side. Even if you don't vote or like, I don't follow politics, you're picking a side. Because we're programmed to pick a side. You're programmed, like, no one wants to live through chaos. No one likes to fall down and scrape their knees.
Mhm.
No one likes to have their lives being pillaged and this and that. So you're looking at what's being portrayed on the world stage, and you realize that it's about ready to implode, and there needs to be massive change to come in. And you're looking at both of these contestants. I just call them contestants because that's what they are. And
Yeah.
you're gonna pick one, even if you don't tell anybody. You're like, and I know the majority of people are looking at Trump to be the guy to bring the order in. I
Mhm.
get that because that's how it's being lined up. It's being lined up that way for you to pick, for you to pick that person. And then if your choice doesn't come true, are you going to have an emotional reaction to that? Even if you don't tell me, even if some of you're like, I don't vote, I don't watch politics. Yeah, but you're still picking a winner. And if you don't get your winner, you're going to be bummed out and you won't even admit it. People won't even admit it. Like personally, for me, I could give a shit. I told people, like, if whoever gets in, it's not going to change my life.
Right.
What is it going to do to change your life? What are they going to do? What are they going to? What policies are they going to change your life? It's not just the United States. It's all these other places around the world that have a say in things as well that can affect your life. So I just don't think that it's going to matter. But I do know that the majority of people listening to this, and I'm going to maybe get a thumbs down. I don't care. People won't. But majority of you listening here, you're already chosen your winner because you don't like something about one of the contestants. And you may say, I don't care who wins, but if someone does get put in and it's your choice, you're going to rejoice in some way. You ain't going to see me do that. I ain't bringing out any pom-poms. I could care less who they put in. I don't care. I have no attachment to that stuff. So And I can
Yeah,
authentically tell all of you that. I mean that.
I think if it does trigger anyone to hear this, that's just a sign that they haven't made it through puberty yet.
Well,
Like
you'll even
you're
get triggered at
still,
that, Jordan.
well, that's what I do best. It's like you're still suckling on mommy's nipple. Like it's time to stop breastfeeding.
Yeah.
I get it. You want mommy or daddy. Like you're frustrated. You're a
Yeah.
spoiled little brat that's had your toy taken away. And you think that daddy's the good guy because he snuck in the room and gave you the toy
Yeah.
that
Good
mom took away.
examples. Good examples.
But it's time to realize that you probably also had the same moment where you found out that Santa wasn't real because the same guy, daddy, showed up in the middle of the night, ate a bite of the cookie, drank half the glass of milk, and you saw him doing it. And
Yeah.
then you caught him red-handed and he had to admit that he's been a serial liar.
Tough pill to swallow, man. I think that's totally, absolutely has so much merit, Jordan. The example of that, that people, because that's how we're programmed to pick a winner, to pick
Yeah.
a side, man. I
It's
mean, I was so bummed
generational
out.
programming.
Yeah, I was so bummed out when I found out wrestling wasn't real. WWF wrestling. Yeah,
Yeah, dude, I
I was
fucking love the
mad.
Ultimate
I was
Warrior.
freaking pissed off when I found out it was not real. I was
Yeah.
fighting it. It ain't.
Yeah.
Oh, come on, man. No way, no way, no way, no way. I was like, I would get mad.
But you know what? Like to reel it on back to like a more conscious perspective, like it is real though. It is
Oh, of
so
course.
real. Everything is real. Like everything that is. So
Yeah,
what are we? It's just our relationship with it.
yeah,
Like my whole thing is like I find Trump to be the most entertaining human being on camera right now. That's what he does for me. And
yeah,
I would love 4 years of watching that guy goof off.
yeah, yeah,
He's the
yeah, for
GOAT.
sure. He's very entertaining.
He's super
He
entertaining.
is.
And
Yeah.
I watched like, and just to get out of the way, I watched like, I actually listened to it while I was driving the other day, just 10 minutes of that new podcast he did with Joe Rogan. And it was like, you can sense that Joe Rogan was dealing with like talking to his grandfather when you're
Uh,
like, you ask granddad the question, and then he starts going back to like how what he did in 1987. And you're like, wait, but I asked you about what you're doing in 2 months. Like, and it's like he can't, like, Donald Trump's way of being is an ongoing story because he's been a professional actor his whole fucking life.
yeah.
He's always been the script.
Yep.
He is the script.
Yep.
And that's what I find awesome about him. Like, keep reading scripts, it entertains us, just like any Hollywood actor would entertain you. That's what I think people need to. Please, I don't want to tell people what to do, so don't take that way. But I mean to say, just from my own honorable perspective, like I don't want to get emotionally invested in these things because it's like getting emotionally invested into a television show on Netflix.
Which
Like
we're
when
all
the
guilty of
season's
doing,
over,
man.
yeah, when the season's over, then you're just like begging for more and you
Yeah.
want
Yeah.
more. Or if it ends abruptly on like a cliffhanger, you're like throwing the popcorn at the television, being
Yeah.
like, what the
Yeah.
fuck? Like,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
like that relationship with stuff I find to be very dangerous because actually like through studying cults, it's a very similar connection that the follower has with the cult leader or like the follower has with the guru.
Yeah.
It's identical actually.
Yeah.
And I know you know this because I brought it up so many times. Like I went through a stage in my life where it was around the same time I was learning numerology and some basic astrology stuff. And it was, most of it gets brought up through the new age. Like that's where you find a lot of this information. So there's plenty of gems out there, but it's kind of in the dirt of the new agey stuff.
Yeah.
And with that, in consideration, as I was going through it all, I realized that like this commitment to the one thing, like the commitment to this one side because you don't like the other side, that's a very common theme. And
Yep.
then what happens is the leadership will leverage on that. So what you just revealed, Logan, that you all already picked and you'll be upset if your side doesn't win. Well, the people who are the master chess players, the grandmasters, they know that. They know your relationship with them and they leverage on that. And that's what
Yeah.
cult leaders do.
Yeah.
So cult leaders always are just trying to scheme like how to get most leverage over the following. And of course, there's a financial side this can go in. There's a sexual thing that this could go in. That's very common, especially in most cults. they play on those themes because those are the themes that run this matrix, money and sex.
Yep.
So yeah, when I took that couple of years to super dial in my understanding of what was going on there, I realized that we don't have any real relationships going on in this world. Almost everything that we're doing is an experiment.
Yep.
And
Agree.
I need to learn how to be in a relationship with stuff if I want to be healed, through that generational trauma that we've all been put through. Like, trust me, guys, I was lied to about Santa too. I was lied to about wrestling too. I was lied to about the tooth fairy and every other fucking thing, just like you were. But then I came to a place where I was like, I don't need to be upset that I was lied to. And I also need to prevent doing the same thing to others.
Yeah.
But that's a conscious choice. I know plenty of fathers that are right now lying to their kids about these pagan holidays, and they know what it's about. But
Yeah.
that's the sad part. It's like, oh, even with that awareness, you're no longer ignorant. You're still playing the game. Like, which
Well,
one
you
is it?
can't. Well, there's a lot of codependency programming, people being attached to not letting. There's also people pleasing. They don't want to let. I mean, I get it. You got kids. You don't want to let your kids down. The kids are like,
Yeah.
"Ah, everybody else is doing it. Why am I doing?" I went through this as a kid, as a JW man. Being told
Oh,
I
yeah,
couldn't
yeah,
do
yeah.
this, I couldn't do that. So I felt that, growing up, and it affected me. And I've had to really do some work on myself to overcome some of these things. But ultimately, when I was mentioning the wrestling, uh, you're right, it is real. But it's really interesting to consider that wrestling is a simulation and the presidential selection's a simulation because the like if you use wrestling, right? Wrestling, the match is already determined,
Hmm.
right? They already say who's going to win. They have to probably improv some of the moves that they do, but the winner is already chosen. And then what happens after the bell goes off and someone pins the person? Well, the crowd has a response to that simulation. And that you can use as an example for anything in life. Same with the movie, like how many views something gets, how much money it makes at the box office, and how many people tune into the presidential debates. These are
Hmm.
all running simulations to see exactly where you're at and your social media. And we've talked about this, you and I. This is nothing new. Everything's been being tracked for a long time. Since computers came into existence, it's now so easy to track people and what they love and what they don't love. If you're doing online dating, you could show people psychology with computers because if you're on online dating and you're trying to get a hold of like five different women or five different men at the same time, maybe it's showing signs of desperation. And now you can
Hmm.
start to market to somebody with desperation kind of things and you'll be
Yeah.
able to reel them in even more. This is an era where we're moving towards Minority Report. I mean, I'm set on that. I unless some big cataclysm comes in and completely throws out astrology on its head, and Aquarius is not going to be the rise of the machines, then I just don't see it any other way. I just think that we're moving into a very perfected society, as Minority Report talked about. And they're doing that with the computers, the cell phones and the computers. I mean, what's next, really? I was like thinking about getting a flip phone, just because, no, just as have as a backup, so I wouldn't, so I can just put this chip in and use it, whatever. And I thought it'd be kind of cool, nostalgic, whatever. But those things, it's like, when are smartphones going to get outdated? Because
Yeah.
everything gets outdated. I mean, really, if we're looking at the future, when are smartphones going to get outdated? When are we going to stop using these smartphones? We've gone to, I mean, your laptop that you have, that thing's super powerful. That thing's, I mean, compared to the old computers, that thing's tiny.
Yeah.
So, like, what is the bend of the future? Well, you're talking. Can there be a total? A total. I can't. It's so hard to say that word. I think you had struggling with to say that. Uh,
What?
the total.
Totalitarian?
Yeah, that's it. That's it. I think was it you that was struggling? Maybe it wasn't you. Um,
No.
is this what we're moving towards based upon running simulations simultaneously through movies, music, politics, et cetera, gauging people's reactions and then being able to market to people and owning people? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very much in the process. I think they've been beta testing many of these things for a long time, and it has a lot to do with the tech that's already in our pockets. So I think you've already connected a lot of big dots and you ask what's coming next. And what I think is coming next is wearables that project onto your hand or onto um, perhaps something that your glasses can link with, which will tell you the data or whatever would be normally displayed on a phone screen.
Uh,
I think that's coming next. So it'll be glasses initially, and then there was a couple companies that tried doing this with AI, and I don't know if they worked. But yeah, that's pretty much what I see. It'll be instead of like a phone with a screen, it'll probably just be some sort of like pager, like something you clip on, or perhaps like
uh-huh.
similar to a watch. Probably a watch, to be honest, because they want to like make it look cool, right?
Right.
And then it'll link up with the glasses, or it'll link up with some sort of, I don't know if we're ready for eye contact like lenses yet, but that's pretty much the next thing. And then once they get that stuff going, it's like pretty much a Black Mirror episode.
Yeah, man. I was just, I want to say this because we're on this topic. I think this is really important, but
Hmm.
you know, living here in Mexico, uh, I have to have a United States cell phone. Like I have my Mexican cell phone, right? And it's super inexpensive over here, cell phone plan, right?
Hmm.
But I have to have a United States phone. And the reason why is because I can't have a bank account unless I have a cell phone. Like,
Hmm.
because if I want to go, sometimes they do fraud alerts and sometimes they do, oh, we need to verify this transaction. We're going to send a text message to your phone.
Hmm.
So it's literally, this is the mark of the beast, man. This is part of it. And people, I know there are a lot of people out there, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that. Yeah. Well, if you can't buy anything anymore, are you going to
Hmm.
change your tune or are you just going to, you're going to still sit by that? Because you know what? It's very easy to say, I'll never do that. But when you're 5 days of no food, you're singing a different tune, man. When you have 5 or 10 days of hard times, you're singing a different tune.
Hmm.
Right? People they 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 get put in prison. They get arrested and they get put in prison by the district attorney or whatever. And they're engaged and they're in love and they're getting married and their significant other is like can't come see them. There's no visits and they're freaking out, right? Because they miss their partner. So what do? They do whatever it takes to bail themselves out. And they get out on bail, right? This is the same scenario that people are going to be faced with. They're like, I can't have a bank account unless I got a cell phone. It's not even possible at this stage of the game. So all the things that we're moving towards, I just don't see people thinking that they're going to be able to avoid these things. I really don't. What we're moving into. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's the package that people are very against. It's like when it comes to the idea of getting a chip implant in the hand, but I think maybe not as many people are realizing that they already have the mark. That's kind of what you're revealing. Like you
Yep.
already have, we all already have something that tracks, traces, also connects you to all things, and it connects you to all services. And without it, I mean, you would be invisible or you would not be considered a citizen at all. And I think once we're in the place where passports are no longer a thing, driver's license is no longer a thing, and those are put on the blockchain and those are inside of our phones, then you're going to watch this quote unquote mark of the beast thing be pretty obvious
Yeah.
because there will be no leaving the house without the phone, or there'll be no leaving the house without whatever device that'll be needed to have this uh, proof, whatever it might be, a QR code or some sort of two-factor authentication thing. But yeah, we're pretty much full-blown heading in that direction. And I think C19 and that whole event allowed for that to launch. That was the launch pad for a lot of those programs.
Yeah.
And it started off very playful, like people were wigging out about QR codes. They thought they were the end of the world, like it was going to be this draconian whatever. But then, like, how do we mostly see QR codes? You mostly see them at like restaurants. It's
Yeah.
like super harmless stuff, right?
Yeah.
And
Little
that's exactly
menus,
how,
digital
yeah,
menus.
and that's exactly how everything launches. And
Yeah.
I'm not trying to postulate that QR codes are the biggest concern for sovereignty. But it just kind of is what it is. And I agree. I think we're moving into a world where the reliance and the dependence on the mobile device will be pretty much a unanimous thing. And for those who don't have it, good luck.
Yeah,
But it's
I,
what the phone becomes. I don't think it's as important, and this might be the controversial thought, and I would love to hear how you feel about this. It's not what the phone becomes, it's the relationship that you have with the phone today.
mm, mm, yeah. Well, are you asking me my opinion on what that statement means? The relationship.
I mean, just how, like, because I think so many people are worried about, like, yeah, maybe Waters is right. Maybe it becomes a wearable, and then you have this, like, hologram shooting out of your wrist. But, like, my whole thing is, like, bro, we have the problem today, and it's the relationship with the phone today.
Mm,
I think that's already so fucked. So, whatever this thing becomes, what does it matter if your relationship with the thing, like, I just said it earlier too with the whole daddy thing and the Trump situation. Like that was some shit that developed when you were 3 and 4 years old. And now you're 47 years old and you're like drooling over an election.
yeah,
You feel me?
I
So this
totally
is
feel you.
like been your whole life already. Well, if you were born with a cell phone because whatever, you're 12 or I don't know, like you're a young child. I mean, fuck, bro, I don't even know. Are kids that are 18, were they born with cell phones already? I guess, right? Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I think some parents may limit their
'Cause
children or not give it to them until a
But I
certain.
mean, in general, like the invention of it, like, because I've seen people with baby strollers in cities where the kid has the iPhone in the baby stroller.
Uh-huh.
Like, I've already seen that shit. But like, let's just say you're somebody who has a kid, right? Your kid's 10, 12, 13, whatever. They have been born into a world where like they've been glued to that fucking screen since birth,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Their relationship with that is most likely very toxic in comparison to like when I grew up and I was playing wiffle ball. So, I mean, I'm not trying to say that I am better and the kids now are all fucked. This is the inevitable, right? So then you have AI come out, and we have people talking with AI chatbots, or they're becoming very reliant on information from AI, or we even see the rise of like AI therapists, AI girlfriends, etc.
Yep.
Then there's going to be kids born into that fucking world, and
Yeah.
it's like, where do you see Pandora's box closing?
Yeah.
It's like
Well, I don't
that's
think it
the
ever closes. I think it just stays open all the time. It just the colorful changes of the Pandora's box is what we
right.
see. But you made some great points. I mean, I couldn't even imagine kudos to you people that are humping and making babies right now because I just think that people should start thinking twice about what they're bringing into this world, man. Um, because I mean, if you look at just the supermarket, you go to the supermarket and we've gone from now you have the self checkout. And how do you check out? You're not using a keypad. Like you go back to like the 19. I was born in the 1970s, right? You go back to the 1970s, and you go to a grocery store. There was no barcode scanners. There was no red light scanning shit. It was people manually punching in the prices,
Mhm.
right? So now we've gone to manually to now it's all automated, where they're just sliding your item over the red light, and it's beep, beep, beep. What's the next stage? Because that's not going to last either. Because people are like, it's taking too long. You standing in line at the grocery store and I mean, no, who the hell writes a check? Nobody writes checks anymore. You
Yeah. And even with the check, bro, you can take a picture of it and deposit
Yeah,
it
the
digitally
deposit,
now.
exactly,
It's
exactly.
wild. Instant
Wild,
too. Instant
instant.
deposit.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
we're moving. You had said something so profound many years ago, and you had said, I think it was during our podcast, you said the age of Pisces was the age of paper,
Yeah.
right? And I had said,
Tied
so,
to Jupiter.
yep, printing presses, Bibles getting printed, the Gutenberg Bible, the first. This is the print. We're not doing that anymore. We're not going back to paper, man. Everything's Kindle, everything's
hmm
digital. We're going from analog to binary to digital. That's what we're moving towards. There's not going to be anything in between. This is why I think they've said that they're removing the middle class. You're either going to be wealthy or you're not. That's black or white. That there's no analog is the low class, the middle class, and the high class. That's being done away with because
hmm
the analog's being removed from this reality. We're moving into an on-off, black or white, hot, cold.
Yeah.
I think this is where you get into Minority Report and being able to predict crimes. because you can pump everything into a computer. You know everything about somebody, you know their whereabouts. And if it is the mark of the beast where they can track you, right? How are you going to commit a crime? How are you going to do that? They're going to use astrology. Everything's coming back. Uranus is astrology, numerology, enneagram, human design, personality types. These are all going to be clumped together, and they're going to be able to forecast and tell exactly what your moves are on the world stage. The privacy is over, man. You know,
Yeah.
that's how I see the future anyway. I mean, like I said, unless some cataclysm comes, unless there's some separate timeline that people can move into and away from,
Hmm.
you know, there is this talks about, had this discussion with a buddy of mine who thinks that there's going to be the plasma event with the sun. And when that's done, there will be these cities, the smart cities. And then and they're like, there's domes over the smart cities. And if you don't want to be in those smart cities, you got to go out in the wilderness to go back to nature again.
Oh shit, bro. Have you seen that show, The Silo?
No.
Oh man, like I don't really recommend things too often, but you know when I do, they're
Yeah.
bangers.
What is
So
it on? Amazon Prime
it's
or
on
Netflix?
Apple TV.
Oh, it's on Apple TV.
But like for anyone out there, like I would recommend checking out this show Silo. And another reason why is because the second season is coming out in like in like 2 weeks.
Oh,
And I
okay.
believe the release date is also perfect. Let me just double check while I have it on my mind, so I can make sure. I think it's November 15th. One second. Yeah, dude.
Oh, it's
Okay, so it's November 15th, and just very, very quickly, this is perfect for my work because I've been talking about November 15th, 2024 for like 5 months now, at least. So last day of Saturn retrograde, full moon in Taurus, the bull. After full moons, we typically move up bullish in the markets, but it's also just a release of energy in general.
yep.
So this gluttony that we're all going to want to indulge in my opinion, throughout the election season, moving into the 15th, that like that vibe, you know, it'll be like the reap what you sow after the 15th. Like if you treat from the moment this podcast gets released until the 15th dishonorably and like just trash it and waste the opportunity, then you'll be one of those people that has to bear the burden of being distracted at the worst time, like caught with
Right.
your pants down kind of thing.
Right.
Now there's not just the financial implications of that, but I don't want to spend too much time there. Um, Also, like really, really last thing, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it'll be the last day of the sun in Libra in sidereal, effectively right around the last days. So the scales are clearly imbalanced right now. I think the balancing of the final moments of that energy will be throughout those 10 days from like election, or just call it the new moon of November 1st throughout the 15th. And then the 15th will be like if you treated those 2 weeks with passion and genuine like productivity and didn't just get lost in the sauce, it's going to be a dope end of the year for you. And the fact that this Silo movie or Silo show is starting on the first episode of the new season is starting on the 15th is perfect in my opinion, because the show is about people who are living in an underground silo.
Yeah. I was just
It's
reading.
like it's reverse Tower of Babel,
Yeah.
and they're being told, they're being manipulated by a group of technocrats who are like running this from this like computer room. They're being told that outside is will kill you. I don't know if it's necessarily just the air or what's happening, but there was some apocalyptic thing that went down, some cataclysm, and the quote unquote few people who are alive all live in the silo, and they've become like not necessarily a cult, but it's like in that dire situation, you have to do whatever you can, and whoever's the most powerful and smart and whatever, and whoever like made their way to the top, literally that's the way the silo works. So the people who are living at the top are like the lords, and the people who live all the way at the bottom are the ones that are like the slave class that actually runs the silo. They're the
Right.
ones that power it.
Power it
It's
up.
just like the train in the movie
Yeah.
in what's that one's the one movie where it's like the Snowpiercer. It's
Okay.
just like Snowpiercer, where
Uh,
they've segregated the people based on class. Bro, this show is so dope. It gives you a couple of days to watch. If you want to check out the first season, you'll be finding all the gems in it. Like first thing you'll notice is the apple on the table, the
Uh,
apple
uh,
tied to the forbidden fruit, and
yeah.
then it just takes off from there. You'll notice all the connections. I know you'll really love it. And any decoder out there, you're gonna love this show. But it's filmed in a way that's so enticing and kind of keeps you going. So it's a high quality thing. It's not just this cringy, like shitty Hollywood level thing. It's actually super good. And it stars that the main character from Dune, this
Oh
Rebecca,
yeah.
I forgot her name. So yeah, even her, she's playing a role in this whole thing in the new age, I think. I think
Ferguson,
every
Rebecca
actor is, right?
Ferguson.
Yeah. So, anyways, yeah, check out Silo because it kind of shows you this society that's living underground, and anybody who's learned anything about, these kind of more esoteric concepts of cataclysms and resets, if you will, you've heard about these sort of things. And I believe this show is kind of spilling the beans on a lot of what could be the case if there was to be some sort of event. I'm not sure if it could be a nuclear thing. I think me and you talked about the last time we got together. But this show is very inspiring for those who are interested in the way things could go down.
Uh, well, I mean, I looked at the date. It came out May 5th, and that
Hmm.
card is the same as Westworld's card, the Ace of Spades, which is card 40. And that's death and regeneration, man, the Ace of Spades. So when I see it connected to Westworld, that's a big marker for me. I'll
Hmm.
definitely check it out. I'll definitely watch a couple episodes and see what it's all. There's a lot of dystopian stuff coming out, man, and you know,
With similar themes.
similar themes. And I mean, look, I'm not somebody. I'm just going with the flow, man, and I'm not attached to any of this stuff. But I am a realist kind of person, and I do look at the precision of this reality based upon the astrological placements, what the age is going to look like, and I talked about this with you and Jason, and I'll say it again that the age of Aquarius is the age of information. Yes. So you have people that will rise up with being extremely smart. It's about I know thyself. You'll know exactly what you're supposed to be doing. But the other side of it is you're moving from a very spiritual sign of Pisces into a very airy atheist kind of sign of Aquarius, because now you're getting into the geniuses of the zodiac, and they're like, well, I know everything kind of attitude. And the Aquarian energy being ruled by Uranus it's electrical, and this is where we get electrical cars. This is one of the
Mhm.
main reasons why we're moving away from fossil fuels, because fossil fuels is a Piscean astrological placement, right? Oil and gas powered motors, that's all Piscean energy. And so you're gonna have the crossover into the age of Aquarius, and I think we're already there now. So we're getting the crossover, and it's gonna take some time to allow Uranus to establish itself in Aquarius. But there could be there could be a nuclear war that wipes out a large portion of the population. And I say could be, right? I'm just saying it's an idea. I'm not a theory. I'm not saying it's true. So don't try to put words in my mouth, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just saying that it's possible that happens. I'm a huge fan of the show, The 100. And that's the same thing as the silo, man. They have to go through a nuclear war. They have to go underground to survive. They can't come up for years upon years because of the fallout. You have that show called Fallout. I mean, what's going on with the whole mainstream, and then when you look at the age of Aquarius and then you correlate that with the yugas in Hinduism traditions, well, when you follow there's a lot of like Sadhguru saying, oh, we're moving into the Dwarpa stage, but I don't believe everything Sadhguru says. It's
Yeah.
because he's in his position that he's at. I know who he's hanging out with, so I question that stuff. When you study the real books of the yugas, the real books of where it originated from, says that we're in the Kali Yuga and we got a long way to go. And if that's the case, when you line that up with Aquarius, man, there's a lot of control that's going to go on, because the Kali Yuga, you're the farthest away from source energy, so you're not relying on God anymore or spirit. You're relying on man and the running of man of Earth, and allowing man to run the Earth and allowing man to destroy it. And we can see the rise of the machines. and then you move into the age of Capricorn, and then you move back into an Earth sign, and Saturn rules that, which is way different than Aquarius, right? We go back to the Earth. So I think we have a long way to go in the Kali Yuga, and that's not doom and gloom, folks. I'm just being a realist and someone who's looking at this thing from every different angle that I can. What are your takes? Have you ever studied the Yugas, Jordan?
No, I actually haven't.
Oh,
I've
okay.
heard of them, of course. Like I've, over time I've been getting little sprinkles here and there, but I try like personally, I mean, this isn't advice to anyone, but whenever I'm learning about a lot of this stuff, even if there's some sort of predicted date that things are going to go to shit or like this timeline or that timeline, I always just revert back to like, how do I feel? Like how do I feel right now? And like I think I see the power of looking at time in that way. I understand why it's so powerful to look at time in these ways and these ideas of golden age or bronze age or whatever. But my whole thing on it is like it's all about what you're personally putting yourself through. Because I think like similar to Neo in the Matrix movie, you're here to fulfill your mission. And sure, like when he takes the red pill and he goes to Zion or whatever, you see the world as it really is, right? Where it's this kind of destructed, sunless, uh, you know, technological sack of shit. But all in all, he still does what he has to do. So I know that there's a lot to be said about the coming ages and this, group of people thinks it's going to get better and this people think it's only going to get worse from here. But for me, like I'm just looking at life of like what can I do to be the most honorable and the most useful while I'm here.
Yes, agreed, man. It doesn't, because it doesn't matter what's coming, man. Ultimately, what stands true for me is what you just said. Is what you're doing to add value to this reality, and you use that word more than anybody else, the word utility. And what is your life? How are you using your life as utility? And
Hmm.
if that's a thing, because you know, as I've said before, the world leaders that have been put in these positions, um, I mean, the United States government uses the Bible to inaugurate its presidents in. So what does that tell you? That the government is following the Bible and religion, and these people are not deviating away from the course of actions that they're doing. They're
Mm.
just not. Just like the Pope's not deviating away. So, is there something allegorical that they know that you don't know? And what could happen? So, when you correlate this Old Testament book of Zechariah, and then you read this, I think it's chapter 5, verses 2 or 1 or something. It talks about the flying scroll, and the measurements of it is 20 cubits by 10 cubits or something like that. And that's like when you compare that to the dimensions of a missile or something, it's very similar to the same
Mm.
size, right? So this is May, what it means, and this is fire this time. This is not water. This is not flood. This is fire. Fire
Mm.
and brimstone, like it was in Genesis when they destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. When God supposedly destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, fire and brimstone raining down from heaven. Well, that's what nuclear warheads would do as well, is raining down fire. And we have everything. As people say, everything comes in threes, and yet the World War II is there, but there's no World War III. And then what would it do? And again, I've said this. Why are all these underground bunkers around the world? Why are all these people that have a lot of money? Why are they creating these things? Out of fear, but do they know? Like, do you think when you get into a position like Elon or Zuckerberg, or you don't think these people know what's going on? Come on,
Yeah.
you gotta think they know
Actually,
what's going on, man.
one thing that really opened up my eyes was somebody made this video where they showed the simulation of all of Elon's flights for the year of
Oh
2023.
wow, really?
It is crazy, dude. Like they have it matched up to his flight logs on every day of the year for
No
the whole.
kidding.
I don't, and then they made it pretty fast, like 4x, 5x speed. So like homie is just in a new city like every fucking day.
Wow.
He like never stays, and he also has like 13 children or something. So there's plenty of other reasons why he's moving around besides the businesses and the stuff that he's doing. But like you made a point, and it's not to go like super tinfoil hat route, but like if a man who can be wherever he wants to be at the drop of a hat, like he can just get on his private jet and go wherever. If they're starting to get underground bunkers, then you have to realize there's a reason why they're doing that.
For sure, man. They're
Because
not
they
going
can
there to
get
hang
out of
out
the
and have
way of anything they
barbecues.
want.
Yeah, they're not
Yeah.
going. They're not roasting hot
Yeah.
dogs and
The
hamburgers.
most expensive wine cellar.
I'm sure, but I. You know what? That thing is down there though.
Yeah. Yeah,
They
for
got all that
sure.
shit down. But I mean, when I was into this thing, the under you would see the truckers going in under the and they're bringing in loads of cargo.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah.
like it was you see I saw it myself. I saw real footage of
Yeah.
people
I've seen
driving
some
into.
videos of trucks going into like a mountain face, and you're like,
Yeah,
where are they going?
where are they going? And where do they got in the
It's like,
cargo? But I mean, like you would
yeah.
think this has been going on. I mean, this was well over 5 years ago that I was watching these videos. So if you're doing
Hmm.
this on the daily and you're
Yeah.
bringing shit underground on the daily 5 years in a row, I mean, 5 years straight. I mean, that's a lot of stuff you're bringing. Something's going on, man. So again, I mean, this whole biblical thing with the Zechariah and the flying scrolls, and it could be matching up to a nuclear warhead, and that the flying scroll in the biblical description is
Hmm.
supposed to bring judgment over the whole land. Well, you know, that's judgment, man. You know,
But what's your take on like the whole like Galen Windsor thing and like talking about like swimming in vats of nuclear material, and he like kind of debunked the whole nuclear thing. I'm not trying to, cause any division out there amongst people, but there is that whole side of things where there are like full-blown debunking of the concept of nuclear war. And how it's just been used as a narrative and a scare tactic. But like, have you looked into any of that?
yeah. I mean,
Okay, so what's your take on that?
I have so I know somebody personally that worked at a nuclear
Plant?
facility.
Yeah.
Yeah, and on top of that, what are you going to tell me? What did they blow up in the desert during the Trinity test?
Hmm.
What the hell was that all about? Because there was tons of witnesses, and they have it on video, right?
Well, I've seen there's one video that's very famous. I don't know if it was from the Oppenheimer thing,
Yeah.
but it was a filmed alleged atomic explosion, right?
Uh-huh.
And but how did the camera not explode?
During what for Trinity test?
I'm not sure about that, but is that the same thing as what was there's like a bunch of famous old videos, but one is showing a kind of like a mushroom cloud sort of type explosion in the middle of the desert. I'm not sure where it was, of Nevada or Arizona or some shit. But I just don't understand how you're going to have that blast like that nuclear blast where you see like a house turn to dust, but then the camera was able to make it through.
Yeah, I don't
Like
know, man.
there's a
Maybe they have to.
discrepancy there, right? Like
Yeah, there
how
is,
do you
but
film that with
well, maybe they have
what
tech.
tripod did they have?
Well, yeah. Well, if we consider that there's technology that's been underground for thousands of years, you would think they'd be able to withstand something like that if they bring that technology up above ground and now they're not using a GoPro, right? So
Hmm.
now you're getting something that can withstand that kind of stuff. But the Trinity
Sure.
test for me, and then how about the bombs they dropped over Japan and Nagasaki?
Hmm.
That killed so many people. I mean, that's a real deal stuff, man. That's not TNT they're dropping.
Yeah, I heard those were fire bombs.
Well, I mean, I wasn't there. I can't verify that, but I know
Sure.
a lot of people died during those times. And when you look at the carnage, when you look at the city, and what it looked like after the fact
Sure.
pictures, they were annihilated.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just interesting. Like I personally shouldn't talk too much about this because I am by no means an expert. I know there's
Me
people out
neither.
there that
Me
have
neither. I'm
dedicated
purely
so much to it.
speculative.
I've come to this information and it was one of those moments where, like everything popular is wrong. So you go, "Oh, okay, that's interesting. Let's dive into this." And I spent maybe a couple hours and I was not convinced, but it was fascinating, to have the points be presented. Like all things, right? There's so many of these anomalies and discrepancies with the narrative, and you have to do your best to fight through it to get to your truth, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, look at what happened in Fukushima, the nuclear reactor, and then Chernobyl. And I mean, these are nuclear, right? So if they have those things that can power up cities, I think that they have the technology to create, you know, these these warheads. And I'm
Hmm.
not an expert, so I'm just being very theoretical. I have
Hmm.
absolutely no proof. Just like I have no proof that there's underground aliens in Area 51, but my truth is there is.
Well,
Absolutely, there's
just
something in the yeah.
2 days ago, I think Putin came out like on camera telling the Russian military to prepare their nuclear drills.
No shit.
Yeah, like it was kind of a big deal, I suppose, but there's so much of that war talk now that it's like everything kind of gets like it has its 30 minutes in the sun and then it goes away. But yeah, that was
All
straight
right,
up a real thing. And I haven't done too much decoding on Russia, but I do feel that that the apex predator has very much been using that tactic in Hollywood for a long time, and most recently Stranger Things, I think, is one of the best examples
uh,
where, have you watched Stranger Things?
of course, huge fan
Did
of
you
the.
watch all of the seasons?
I've watched them all.
Okay, so the last season they put a lot of emphasis obviously on Russia and Hopper's been, taken captive
Yep.
in a Russian prison in Russia, and they show you these monsters and all this shit that they're doing.
Yep.
So that's already revealing to you something quite nefarious and crazy. But on the other side of things, it's like, why are they keep why do they keep pointing to Russia for being like our arch nemesis, the rival?
Mm.
Because it's been going on I mean, dude, they even made a Rocky movie where they wanted to like bring that up, like the Ivan Drago thing. So
Rocky Four. Yeah.
it's always been a fucking thing. But one of the things I find most fascinating about the last season of Stranger Things is the play on the mythology with Vecna and how they've done this with Darth Vader. They did this with Lord Voldemort and Harry Potter, where they show you like their earlier life, they were like controllable and they were like the chosen one or they were the light side. Like, I mean, literally, Vecna is one, and
Uh,
Anakin from Star Wars is the chosen one, and then he becomes Vader, right? So but this V being Vader, Vecna, Voldemort, this transformation from one substance to the next, like they become this powerhouse that's the main antagonist of the whole story. And you learn in that last season of Stranger Things that it's been Vecna all along, right? And he was the one that took advantage of this portal being ripped open, and he's created this hell world, this underworld, whatever. It's not necessarily a spirit realm, is it? Because it's interacting with the Matrix, it's interacting with this physical realm physically,
yep.
because we see the real monsters destroy the real Hawkins. So, bro, like maybe that is what I would be more open to that. It's like, are they opening up portals and they're gonna blame it on nuclear? Like, I think that would be the way it would all go down. That's what CERN is, and that all that shit they're doing there. So they're gonna open up a portal, or already have been, and their little experiment they know will eventually not be so controllable, and the script will play out from there. These monsters, these things that have been ripping through and made it to this dimension will be able to interact with us. And perhaps that's what the things we call dinosaurs or the things that we see in all of these horror movies, they might have been real or they might actually be real. It was just the war of wars, the war that ends it all is the war with the spirit realm becoming three-dimensional,
Mm.
where all of our thoughts and all the fucked up shit that's going on in our mind that we draw out and we create movies about, it exists somewhere, right? It must.
Yeah.
Otherwise, where did we get the idea of it?
True.
And then we are fucked up enough to want to create that stuff in laboratories or whatever. Like everyone should know by now, they're already doing human animal hybrids.
Oh, yeah.
That's why they had to come out
Chimera
with a
and stuff
Netflix
like
show
that.
about it. Exactly. That's why they had to come out with a Netflix show about it, of like children being born with deer antlers and shit. They're doing that to predictably program us all for a moment where that might be very much the case.
Yeah.
I'm not sure the cause of that necessarily, but this is the way my mind's thinking about it. I think that'd be the perfect, the nuclear scam. Maybe it's real, but for me, I'm leaning more on this path. The nuclear thing would be the blame of either what I just said or something going on with a staged alien invasion or something of that nature. I
Yeah.
think they want to pull one of those out, and I'm not sure how, but I believe they spend more money on those agendas than they do on anything that's happening on the ground that you're calling war. These
Mm.
tanks and shit and guys with AR-15, bro, that's nothing when it comes to the military budget. The
Yeah.
real military budget is the fucking monsters they're keeping in cages somewhere,
Yeah,
in
maybe you're
vats of
right.
formaldehyde in Russia. That's the
Yeah.
real military budget. Because to keep those people silent and to do all of that stuff, bro, that's a completely, yeah, that's a wild thing to talk about. But I'm sure, people that are tuning into either of our work are interested in this stuff.
Yeah. Well, those are very good points to consider. I'm on board with some of those theories. I also think that, you know, when we talk about hell, um, and Sheol in Hebrew, well, is
Mhm.
it possible that there's just some places that are under the water? Like you got to go below the you got to go deep down into the ocean, and there's bases down there.
Bro, remember
That's
the
hell.
last season of Stranger Things? What do
Yeah.
they do to get to the Upside Down? They
Yep.
went through, they called it Watergate.
Yep. Yep. So I think
Bro, they're
that's
showing us everything in
yeah,
that
I think
show,
that's the
man.
case, man. I think that there's underground bases, and I think that's maybe where the underground aliens are, or the extra whatever they came from, or whatever they
Yeah,
are.
and perhaps they're not. Yeah, perhaps we just made them,
Maybe. Yeah. Maybe. But I I have a feeling that
or they made us.
there is the fall. Yeah, that is true too. I also think that the fallen angels and the whole story of Prometheus,
Hmm.
and the engineers and all that. I think there's a lot of truth to consider here. As
Hmm.
a possibility that mankind was created by, we could say the Anunnakis. I'm not going to get into these topics. These are
Sure,
things
sure,
to
sure.
consider, but there is the possibility that they're underground and they keep pumping out, and they've made human beings, and now of course we have our underground stuff at Area 51 and Los Alamos and all these areas, and they're doing the Chimera and all these experiments, and maybe those things are going to get let out, and this is where we talked about this with Jason and the super soldiers, and they're all making these super soldiers. I have no doubt that they're underground making superhuman beings, and I have no doubt that we're going to see superheroes on the world stage that can do shit um like we see on did you ever see the show The Boys? Did you ever watch that show?
No,
You never watched The Boys on Amazon Prime?
no, no, no.
Oh,
But I
dude.
think of Lucy. That makes me think of like what a superhero gone
Yeah,
wrong would be.
yeah,
Kind of
but
that idea.
these, but The Boys, which is an amazing show, if you can stomach some of the stuff on there, it's very crude in some ways, but they start pumping themselves full of what's called compound V, and it's this blue stuff they inject themselves with, and you take a human being,
Bro,
they can make a
there's the
superhero out
V.
of a person as the V, right? And
There you go.
we had the V back in the day in the 1980s. We had the show called The V, which was about reptilian. Then they have the reptilian
Yeah.
stuff, which I think
Got
is
V for Vendetta.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's another movie, yeah. But I think there's something to the reptilian stuff. I think that could be tied to the underground the underground entities that exist. And I think that the Abaddon, the destroyer that comes from underground, the locusts. I think that's what you're gonna see, man.
Hmm.
Yep. I think they're
You
gonna.
know what I've been thinking about lately though? Like whatever those beings are, like I think we might have one time talked about this. Like if there was like out of nowhere some portal dimension ripped open and we started seeing dinosaurs again. Like for a fact there's gonna be some dude in Texas that like comes out guns a-blazing, like shooting a T-Rex. It's like, bro,
Hunting
like
it.
yeah, and it's like I think that's exactly why we're not able to be around any of this stuff. Like whatever it is, this might be a little woo-woo or spiritual, too spiritual for people, but I'm a firm believer, coming back to what we said earlier, like God only shows up when you allow it.
Yeah.
So I'm not trying to say a fucking T-Rex coming ripping through a portal is God, but the thing is that all of the things that we imagine, because there's utility in where I'm going with this. Everything you imagine becomes, everything can be. So the same imagery and imagination that you utilize in any form, it could come to be, but why should it unless you actually allow it? And that the reason is honorable, right?
Right.
That's the reason why I don't think we should have superpowers, because I think we would abuse them.
Oh,
Everything that we possibly could do with these superpowers, I think we would probably do the wrong things with it.
sure.
And Stranger Things, I think, points to a great example of it where, Elle has a heart. She like actually is just this like pure little girl who's been taken advantage of by some MK Ultra laboratory. But she wouldn't even be special if it wasn't for going through that whole
Yep.
traumatizing experience. And she ends up, quote unquote, saving the world many times now. But it's not just that she saves the world, it's that she has to have a relationship with the duality of the love she has for Mike and the hatred she has for that experience of her past. And she could leverage on either of those things to access her power. But you see throughout the show, she abuses her power all the time.
Yeah.
So if you gave every person on this earth the ability to be telekinetic and to read thoughts and whatever, we would fuck it all up, right? And it's no different than quote unquote aliens coming here. Because if there were to be aliens that come here, you would see people immediately start throwing Molotov cocktails at it. And it's like, why? Why do we always respond so violently to everything?
Yeah.
And it's because we are not ready to advance. We are better off as slaves. We are better off with the blue pill. We are not, and that's why me and you are able to vibe because we try to not talk so badly about the elite because we see it as what it is. At that state of consciousness that they're operating at, they're allowing all of the magic. That's why they have access to it.
Yep.
Whilst we would do some really unsophisticated things with that magic, you know? And it's not to say that somebody like Baron Rothschild has actual magic powers. It's
Yep.
not that. It's that his bandwidth of consciousness that he can perceive is way greater than yours most likely.
Sure.
And it's at a scale that's unfathomable. And perhaps he needed to go through his own rituals to access that, right? Perhaps that's the case with Hollywood and these
Yeah, maybe.
celebrities. It could very well be. So like yes, the MK Ultra thing that they all go through, it's like it's hell, but it is the same process that unlocks the greatest talent those individuals have. It's
Yeah.
no different than the L thing. And to be great in this world stage, that's your initiation, right? Our whole thing is just how do we go through that whole process without tormenting others and fucking shit up and destroying everything. But ultimately, if you want to be successful and you want to be great, you have to disrupt something, right?
Yeah, totally. Totally. Well, I personally think we're going to see superheroes on the world stage. I've said this time and time again over the years. Again, that I looked and analyzed how life works. I gave the analogy of we use navigation on it. Everybody here uses their phone for navigation, or if you get in your car, you have navigation in the dash. You're not pulling out a Rand McNally map from the trunk that's got shit
Hmm.
all over it to try to figure out how to get to a certain street, right? So when you see the progression of our reality, and you take that into the context of superheroes, those started in comic books back in the 1920s, and then they made their way onto the silver screen and movies, and then the movies became three-dimensional when you go and wear your three-dimensional glasses. And now, what's the next stage? As we talked about, what's the next stage of cell phones? What are cell phones going to look like in 10 years from now? We've gone from flip phones were still a thing 10 years ago. They're still around, but everybody's got a brick for a phone now, right? Mostly everybody here listening you have a smartphone,
Hmm.
right? Can you leave that position? Like, I thought of like, anyway, but
People wouldn't if they could because look, they haven't
you
done it.
can't. Yeah, you can't.
They just haven't done it.
Yeah, but like you
So
go to a restaurant, they don't hand out paper. We don't do paper here. You got to scan the barcode. Well, if you don't have a phone to scan the barcode, what are you gonna do? Like, are you gonna ask for paper menus? I do. Like, can I get a paper menu? But they're gonna some restaurants I've asked, they don't have them.
yeah, they look at you like you're fucking from the
You're an
future or
idiot.
something. Yeah,
Yeah, what the
you're
hell?
from
Where the hell you come from,
the
dude? You're a
uh
moron, right? Yeah, exactly. So those are all being phased out, and I think when you look at the trend, when you look at the progression of that, I think superheroes are going to come onto the world stage. I think people will love to have superheroes on the world stage, and this is where you could have a controlled society. You could have a controlled society because if you get out of line, you'll just get taken out.
yeah,
So you have a,
maybe you're right, like in a sense. And the only way I could postulate that is if these superheroes are currently being trained.
yeah,
to be introduced to our world. Like, but I don't think that I don't like, and maybe so I could understand what you mean exactly, because I'm not sure if you filled me in on this, but like, I don't think a regular person transitions into what we could consider superhero. I just won't, I
Maybe,
don't see
maybe
it being
not.
possible. Because
Maybe, maybe not.
if that was to be the case, I think that person would not only abuse things, but there would be this cult like, worship. And then there would also be this whole like blasphemer, like no different than a Christ character.
Sure.
Like that's the Christ story, right? It's like
Yeah.
people thought he's the one, and then people thought he wasn't the one.
Yeah.
Well, look at the Dune movie. It's the same fucking bullshit.
Yeah. They have a
Yeah,
good
like
point. They have a good point.
is he the one or is he not the one? And then he has to like sacrifice himself to team war to prove that he actually cares about the people and that, it's like, what, dude, it's the same story
Yeah.
rehashed fucking gazillion times. So if the main character in life becomes this, superhero, it'll just be turned into the savior character. It'll be the Neo guy. Like, look, he's the one that could do all the cool shit. And then they'll worship, and then the other people will think he's the devil.
Yeah. Yeah. I know this
It
is
will
like
be right back on duality.
super far fetched. Like this is like very science fictiony, theoretic positions that I'm expressing here. But again, you look at how we've moved from. I mean, you go back to you know, the 1700s. There's no gas powered cars. There's no solar panels on people's roofs. There was no hot water heaters in your basement. There's none of that stuff, man. There weren't refrigerators like we have today.
Yeah.
They don't have lights. They don't have light bulbs that can last, the forever now. The ones they put on there. They
Yeah, I
don't
walked
have
around with
energy
candles.
saving, huh?
We walked around with candles.
Candles and lanterns with gas and oil. I
Yep.
mean, we're not going back to that. At least I don't think so. I just can't imagine. And who would want to when we're so used to the convenience of life? Like
Yeah.
I know a lot of people say, "Yeah, I could go back to." Yeah, you say that. You say that, man, but let's see you go do it for a while. People freak out just go on a 5 day silent retreat, or people can't even most people can't even fast for 4 days. They can't like to not eat for a couple of days. They'll freak out.
Hmm.
And then how about over 50% of Americans on prescription drugs? Over
Yeah.
50%. Yeah, how are they going to do it? No, I just don't. I mean, you got to use the common sense and critical thinking here. I just don't see it. I see the world crumbling around the big cities, all these drug induced. When I did the Zombie Land and Kensington, Pennsylvania, and all the big cities they've legalized all drugs in Vancouver. Everything's legal there now. Nothing's illegal anymore in Vancouver. What's the next city to do it? I mean, they have done it already in Amsterdam, but that's a little bit different. But you go to Vancouver, man, and these people are like literally zombies. We're now seeing the zombies.
Yeah.
It's already here.
I think
We're
we
getting the
talked a
World
little
War
bit
Z.
about this
Huh?
with I think we did talk about this a little bit with archaics in regards to this like you'll own nothing and be happy
Yeah, well, you
world,
did mention. I think
virtual
you mentioned it.
reality. Yeah, and I was just kind of envisioning a future. I mean, the number one catalyst for this frame of thought is actually quite fucked up, but it's through conversations that I've been having in my personal life about like I don't think anyone is really ready for a world with humanoid-like robots. I think we posture ourselves as like, yeah, it would be cool to have like one vacuuming my carpet, right? Or
Uh-huh.
like making a coffee for me in the morning. But I don't think people understand the how much of that's already been developed and how it's really more about the timing of release at this point. Because
Mhm.
there's already sex robots, there's already talking robots, there's already all of that. So I don't think anyone's really ready for that type of world to come in. And then that was what built like the domino effect in my timeline of, okay, we get these robots, people will naturally develop sexual relationships with them. And then once that becomes a thing, we'll see a plummet in dating. And we've already seen that since C19. That's become quite pretty much normal. And then there's some places geographically that are already having a crisis with birth rate declining. And, I mean, I'm not one to be saying that we would save the world by having more babies, but we might be able to bypass a world where we just default to the easy button, which would be AI robots, right? I don't know what that's going to be. I could use my imagination, but I think with just 1 or 2 years of that uh, practiced by the first world, we would be in a death spiral. Like we will have a complete change in psychology, we'll have a complete change in cultural norms and morality. I mean, in a lot, right? At a place where we thought this whole like liberal and trans agenda was crazy. Imagine the transhumanist agenda, right? That unfolding in real time, I think, would be quite interesting. And the speed of which it'll get adapted, I think, will go a lot faster than some people would like to imagine. But
Yeah.
all of this is kind of coming back to, well, if we're not able to get a wife anymore, we could just buy the wife. And I likely you probably won't have money to buy it in that world. So there'll be some action you take tied to some biometric thing, which will give you credits, and the credits will be used to rent the thing.
Mm.
So it'll be like you get to have your wife on credits in your UBI program for 30 minutes or 4 hours or whatever. You feel me? And that'll be the concept here. Like I think there's a movie that shows you work for the credits, right? Like in the AI world, you is it Ready Player One?
Yeah.
Or is it not quite that exact concept? I mean, I'm just thinking that there will be a UBI moment because of hyperinflation and because well, jobs will be for the most part replacing humans with robots and artificial intelligence. So what will be the solution to that, right? Well, the New World Order already has it figured out. And I think that could very much be the thing before 2026 for a lot of sectors. So you'll see all the people who drive Uber Eats or Uber or Lyft or Bolt or any of those things that's not going to be a job for I don't see that being a job in 3 years.
Mm.
I think the airports will just have their own self-driving fleet already there.
Okay.
And humans will be illegal to pick people up
Huh.
because
Interesting.
there's already airports that have said there's no taxis allowed or no Ubers allowed. And then they put the Ubers all in one section.
Yeah, one
Right?
section.
Well, bro, where do you think this kind of rule system is heading? You think they're gonna, like, if the airport could make cash flow every minute of every day because of every flight getting a kickback on the self-driving car, you don't think the airlines would invest in this and do this? Come on.
That's it.
These are
Those are,
technocrats. These are people that don't give a fuck about humanity. They just want to make money.
yeah. Well, I mean, it's always about that, right? Power,
Yeah.
money, that kind of
And
stuff.
they own the airport, so they could do whatever they want. And I see that very much being a thing. And that accounts for a large portion of rideshare.
Uh-huh.
And then the next thing you know, all the clubs, all the venues, Madison Square Garden will create the same rule. Say you're only allowed to get in the self-driving Madison Square Garden vehicle, and no Ubers are allowed in this area, and they will geo-target it and block it. They could already do this. That technology was invented by the NHS like before Uber was even an app
Right.
where they could geo-target and cancel out so that these rideshare. And then you got to think, well, what's the future of Uber? Well, they already have to have a solution for it, so they will have it. Tesla will have it already.
Sure.
They'll probably maybe behind the scenes, and we don't even know. They have a partnership with Uber right now, or they have a partnership with Lyft that's already happening contractually behind the scenes. None of us know about it, but this is the way technocrats think.
Yeah.
So I'm just laying out this idea now because I want people to protect themselves, man. Because if you're getting reliant on this type of job, on this gig work, I would, I would wake up soon. It's time to wake up. It's time to wake up that that's not a forever job.
Yeah. Well,
I know that breaks a lot of hearts out there, but I think hopefully it's more inspiring than it is depressing.
yeah. Well, we talk about this robot thing, and you know, again, I just go and I look at the age of Aquarius. I think it's inevitable. The
Hmm.
rise of the machines is going to come, and it's already here. You know, the I think the number one reason for people getting divorces is irreconcilable differences, which you could say it's, communication problems, whatever. But I
Hmm.
think that the legal reasons cited in most divorces would probably be that. And if you had a robot for a partner, the robot can't argue with you. It's not gonna call you any names. It's not gonna debate with you. It will be very peaceful. It will be literally a slave to you.
Well,
So,
bro, can I just interject really, really
of
quickly?
course,
I don't want to ruin your stream of consciousness, but that's kind of true, but kind of not. But you can program it as you like.
sure.
And so I've just somebody sent me a tutorial from somebody that was talking with a chatbot where it told it like I want you to not be submissive.
Right.
So it went about the rest of the conversation in the essence of something that would give you pushback. So
Got
I'm
it.
just letting you know it's already savvy and like soup like it is subordinate. It will do whatever you say.
Yeah, but I'm saying is my point. I
But of course,
totally
yes,
agree.
I completely understand where you were going with
Yeah,
it. I was just letting you know that that's how good the tech is
yeah.
that it's already able to be programmed to be spicy.
Yeah, yeah, spicy
It's
man. Yeah,
fucking
but I'm
rough,
saying
dude.
if you're just like those of you listening that are in a relationship, if you're married or whatever, like I got friends, man, that they dump their their problems on me. I got friends that come, they're married or they're in relationships, and I hear their woes about their relationships. I'm like, I'm just such an easy person to talk to, and it's been that through my whole life. So and I've had my share of this, the drama, and when somebody gets down to the bare end of the relationship where they're just sick and tired of it, everything turns them off about that person.
Hmm.
What value would it give you if you could program your partner not to annoy you anymore? Right? What value would that have? What you could never do it, right? Because as I've told all my friends, you're not going to change the person, man. They're not
Yeah.
change for you. The only time you see a non-true character is in the beginning. Because in the beginning of a relationship is when people start behaving not genuinely.
Yeah, it's Hollywood acting.
It's acting, baby. Because they have one thing that they want probably, and that's sex. They
Hmm.
want the sex, man, or they want companionship, or they want a kiss, or they want someone to rub their shoulders, or they want to cuddle, right? So these are things but that wears off, and then you just wish you could just shut them up. Like, just shut up. I don't want to hear your shit anymore. This is where the value of
Yeah.
robots will come in because people are going to be like, I'm not, and then you don't have to get a divorce from the robot. So you're not looking at sharing 50% of your finances with somebody. There's no more non-competes or there's no more uh what are the things you sign?
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
there's no more of that
Prenups and
anymore.
stuff.
Yeah, prenups. Yeah, that's a thing
Yeah.
of the past, man. So you're moving into the benefits of this would be just that. And then yeah, if you want to add the spice, you can program the robot to give you a little bit of spice. But anytime you want to shut that robot up, man, you just turn it off. And I
Yeah.
think that's the value of this robot surge. I think we're going to start to see on the world stage that a lot of people are shy to date. They're afraid that the person's going to say no,
Sure.
so they don't even attempt it. And especially if it's somebody who doesn't they feel insecure about themselves. They don't like the way they look in the mirror. Maybe their parents told them they were no good. So they have no self identity, or there's a
Hmm.
crisis with they're just going to turn to the robot because like the robot's not going to look at you like you're this or that. There's a lot
Right.
of those people in the world today that have these tendencies, these personality traits. They have a lot of trauma. A lot of people have trauma and they're not dating. So they just do porn to release, you know. So now they can get a
Hmm.
sexual robot, they can come in and they can have a conversation with this thing and it's not going to fight and it's going to accept them for who they are. You're going to see a surge in robots. That's what I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, me and you are on the same page, like pretty much identical. And I think it's all going to start rolling out by next year. There's already a company, I think, in Norway that has gotten an insane amount of funding after an initial fund. Board is complete. Like they might even go public. And it's a similar thing to what Elon showed with Tesla robots, but they just tutorial really quickly of them making a coffee, some harmless shit in the
Uh-huh.
house. But apparently it's only like 70 pounds or 80 pounds. It's like you could push that shit on the floor, you
Right.
know? So I don't think it's ready yet to like pick you up, But there's a lot of opportunity there. Like, I mean, what about somebody who's a quadriplegic and they're in a, whatever situation, and like having a fucking strong robot that could get you out of bed and maneuver you and do all of this stuff, like that would be an insane benefit to
Would be
have.
huge.
It would be
Good point. That'd
huge.
be good. That's a good
So
point.
I know that I mean, dude, look how many veterans out there that have like been injured at war. It's fucked up, dude.
Yeah.
And like instead of like the excruciating pain of loneliness and having nobody that could help them with all of the rehabilitation and everything, like there's so many prime use cases for humanoid like robots. Trust me. Like I can name them
Yep.
endlessly forever. As a very compassionate person who's maybe too compassionate sometimes, I could see into that, those worlds. And I just know for me, like I don't want to say I'm like a humanist because I've been spending most of my last couple of years pretty much pure blown tech nerd,
Right.
getting into crypto and all of this stuff. But I have personally used my imagination enough to the point where I've explored what you just laid out, and I don't think it's pretty. Like if they do have sex robots that are I don't even think affordability matters because I know they're going to put it on a payment plan for people. Like that's end game.
Yep.
That is end game because once you have that be part of things, then I mean, it's a slippery slope. And I think that I brought up the financial side of things a little bit earlier too, with the self-driving cars and just getting rid of the whole taxi driver, Uber driver thing, food delivery driver, like all of that. That's huge, and that all happened very soon. I don't know when Elon said that these Tesla robots will be ready, but they're already ready and operating.
Yep.
As for when they'll be commercially available, I think by 2026 we should see them. So if he's behind it, it will be. He's never not delivered.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay? So obviously it's not him, he's a puppet, but like my point is that if they're using him to push that thing, then you know what's happening. This isn't a man who like explores an idea and then it never comes to fruition. Like it is gonna be real. And I'm not sure how much they've been implementing in the background, but he had a quote like 2 days ago over on X. And I only know this because X I've been using a lot lately for the business, but he said that by 2040, I think. I don't know if it's 2030 or 2040. I might be off, but he said 2040, there will be 10 billion robots. Now that's fucking crazy, right? Because
Wow.
it's the year 2025 coming up soon, so we're talking 15 years
Wow.
away.
Yeah.
And in that time horizon, that would be more robots than the current humans on Earth right now. And now I just want to bring up one more thing. Have you looked into this website called Deagle? It's like a military website.
No. How do you spell it?
Deagel or LE. But there's this thing that I have not entertained, bro, because I know that my outlook is heavy on the world stage now with the community that I've grown and the amount of people supporting my art. So I don't like to entertain shit unless it resonates with me and I feel that it's urgent to talk about. But this website, Deagle, shows for the year 2025 there's going to be a dramatic drop in population. And it shows that like the United States of America loses like a third of its population. The UK loses like 40% of its
And by
population in
what time frame?
2025.
I
And
I,
it's like a
I
military contracting website.
wow.
It's fucking crazy because it's like a legit website. Like they don't just have it for like
You have to send it to me.
conspiracy
I
theory.
don't. Yeah, you have to send it to me. I'll check it out.
Yeah, yeah, sure. I'll try to find
That's
it.
very interesting. I mean, dude, the handwriting's on the wall. I mean, look, we're in the Kali Yuga stage. The Kali Yuga, you're in the Iron Age. You're the farthest away from source energy, which means in Kali Yuga, people are going to be more concerned about materialism and service to self. When you get a robot, that's service to self because you don't have to share space and time and energy with a partner. They do everything for you. So it is a self-centered position that you're putting yourself in.
Hmm.
Right. So you're removing dating and partnerships. And people are now spending more time alone with the robot.
Hmm.
They can do whatever they want with the robot. The robot will do whatever they want. That's self-satisfying. That's Kali Yuga, man. This is all the markings of the Kali Yuga and the Age of Aquarius. And there's going to be a lot of smart people. There'll be inventions like crazy. That's all classic Uranus, Aquarius kind of energy. But I'm not surprised that Elon Musk had said that there'll be all these robots by this time frame, and
Yeah, 10 billion, dude. That's a lot.
that is a lot. That is a lot. That sounds pretty far fetched, but I mean, maybe there's tons of robots that are already underground or wherever they're at, they're being built and they're ready to go.
Somebody sent me this one video of like a guy that's working at a Tesla factory, and I don't know how or what position he plays for them, but he was saying that like they have us working like triple overtime to get these robots out. Like
Interesting.
he was saying that they have the people that are working there in that department, they're working like beyond overtime. Like pretty much anyone who wants to work extra, they will allow it, even if it's breaking like health code standards and shit.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah. Like which again, it's like who would spearhead that mission? It would be him. And he's been the guy that's like every quote unquote everything he does is like the golden child, right? Like he's saving our world. We're gonna colonize Mars. Everyone's gonna be happy with their self-driving car. So it's they're using him to usher in a lot of these things. But I don't want to spend too much time on him. I just found it to be quite
Oh, that's super.
interesting.
That's super fascinating, man. That he's they're doing that and all this stuff that you said about paying overtime and all. I mean, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. Again, I'm not somebody who's looking at the world like, oh, there's something gonna come in and we're gonna go back to shit in an outhouse with a flashlight. I'm not sold on that. Especially when you look at how the Piscean Age has moved into form, uh, how it came to be. You go back to the wild, wild west and the technology back then where there was nothing. There was no technology back then.
Hmm.
It was purely earth. It was pure. Pisces is water, the biology of the body. You know. And then you see the transition, and I just don't think people can live with like I'll be honest. I'll be straight up honest and authentic with all of you here. I would be really kind of lost if I didn't have my technology. I would, because I use it every single day for the majority of my life. Now, I love going out to the beach. I know the value of grounding, getting the electrons. I get all that, getting rid of free radicals, living longer, prevention. I go to the gym 4 or 5 times a week. So I'm big into the physicalness and being a human being. But my world revolves around technology, man. And so does yours.
Hmm.
My world revolves around the things that Aquarian Age is all about.
Yeah.
And that's being authentic. Like I've said, like, what would you do? What would you do if if the internet was pulled and there was no more computers and you had to get rid of the cell phones? What would you do with yourself? Most people would lose their shit.
Hmm.
I don't know what people would do. Think about that. If the internet was removed and computers were taken away and cell phones were a thing of the past, what would people do with themselves? I just don't see us going backwards to that anymore. I think we have to embrace what's coming, no, despite the possible doom and gloom stuff that's coming in.
And in a world where that stuff goes down, then what we all talked about in the last podcast would be very plausible, like jacking into a metaverse world
Yeah.
because you can't take it anymore,
Yep.
or it's just actually so shitty that it's like, no, I don't want to do this. Um, I've seen one company, I think in Sweden, that has already been pilot testing um prisons that'll be putting a VR headset on you in
Yeah.
like a med bed type deal.
Right.
I don't know if they just like jack in some saline solution and just like drip calories into you slowly. But yeah, like you basically just go through a reprogramming camp
Uh-huh.
virtually. And this is like the way of prisons in the future. Like it's fucking nuts, but that's exactly what I see going down.
More Minority Report. I mean,
Hmm.
that's tech
Yeah.
because you have
So
everything's
be
being
wild to watch
overdriven.
that. It'll be wild to watch that become a thing. Because then what it'll do is it'll like make putting people in jail not seem so rough, you know? Like
Sure.
what would death row be in a world where like your consciousness is just jacked into a fucking computer simulation? We wouldn't look at it as bad anymore. And I don't know, maybe initially people would take advantage of that. They would want to commit crime more. I don't know. Like, there's so many ways to spin this.
Yeah. There's a million different ways, and we're theorizing and speculating and all that kind of
Sure.
stuff. But I personally, Jordan, you know, I think the handwriting's on the wall. I think it's inevitable that we're moving towards like a perfected society. This is perhaps what the Bible was alluding to when there's going to be a paradise, or maybe not. Maybe, I had said this before. I'll say it again that um, maybe the paradise or the heavenly realms are the opposite astrological sign that we're in. So the age of Aquarius would be the dualistic reality that you'd be able to entertain, but those that are deserving would go to the heavenly realms, which would be the opposite, which is be in the sign of Leo, and Leo's
Mm.
ruled by the sun. So maybe the dark age in the Kali Yuga would be the Aquarian age, but people that actually get to transit and move past that into the heavenly realms, they get moved into a timeline that would be of the across the way from Aquarius and be in the age of Leo. This is purely theoretical, by the way. Like I
Mm.
can't prove that, but it is something to think about. To
Yeah,
satisfy.
it's making me think like, because I did a very small amount of decoding on this upcoming Super Bowl, not to decode the Super Bowl, but just to kind of get some connections for this election stuff that I was talking about earlier. And it looks like the Detroit Lions are like super favorable for next year. And then I was like kind of sharing within the decode the concept, the concept to the Dragon Year and how we are pretty much pushing through the Dragon Year for this entire NFL season we're in right now, even though the Super Bowl will be on the following Gregorian year. So the energy of this year is very influential, and the connection between the dragon and the sun mythologically, and the sun obviously rules Leo, and getting into some of those connections, it was fun, but brought that idea into the mix, and there's definitely some things going on with the lions and the Leo symbolism and Yaldabaoth and Demiurge symbolism with the lion. Plenty of different places to take that idea.
Well, I mean, I just decoded Lionsgate last night live with my
Oh,
community.
really? Nice.
Yeah, and you had asked me about the golden ratio cipher, and I
Hmm.
used that one heavily during that decode, and it's such a special cipher because like if you take the word sun, it's 808 in the golden ratio, and 88 is Ra. It's the sun, right? So it's a 16, and 16 reduces down to the number seven, and seven is the pattern the sun makes, the 171, the 717. So the golden ratio cipher is very valuable. Well, anyway, the word lion is 29, which
Hmm.
is the same value as Yod He Vahe, same value as Yaldabaoth. It comes out to be the same as Allah, and these were all referencing the sun.
Hmm.
The sun being the lion, which is the dragon, which is
Yeah.
Allah, which is Yaldabaoth, which is the Yod, which is Jesus, which is Lucifer. They all fit into this.
Hmm.
Yeah, and the
Yeah, and
sun.
that solar eclipse, the eclipses that we've had this year are very powerful, the solar eclipses, but next year it's the lunar eclipses that are very powerful.
Uh huh.
So the fact that the Super Bowl will be before that March eclipse kind of is another thing I've been thinking about. And then it's like this play on the old world and the new world, even though Detroit is like kind of representative of the old world with automotive cars, and now we're moving electric, and but that's only one part of the script, right? There's plenty of other things here just with the symbolism of the lion itself, which you were talking about.
Yeah.
So kind of like the looking at it from the concept of this spiritual side versus the Chiefs, or I mean, I'm not trying to get into the decode right now. It's a little unnecessary, but there's definitely a theme here with the sports. It's blowing my mind how many times that I've started to do a decode into something with sports related, and then it ended up aligning so perfectly. Like, I mean, even last year is a great example with the Golden Knights winning, 49ers losing, cancel of energy, and then gold just surges. Like, gold has been on a tear. I'm talking about precious metals gold.
Yeah.
So, and it's all been the Dragon Year. So yeah, pretty crazy shit, man. Um, gotta love the code. Gotta
Yeah,
love the
it's
code.
and yeah, and this is to me, it's just the organic code playing out, and it plays through everything. Everything's interconnected. Um, so it's pretty obvious when you start looking at all these things.
Yeah. And that's a big reason why I throw in these cultural elements because like when you look at the market right now, like yeah, sure, we have this awareness of the City of London and the Vatican, but like it's the New York Stock Exchange, man. Like that's what we're talking about with this market. And with that being said, connecting it back to American cultural themes is the way to go to save a lot of time, with your decoding. And naturally, what are the two big events? Well, you have the election that's going on this year. You have the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So it's always symbolic, and that's why it's starting to make so much sense to me why the sports games, these big ones, go the way they go. I don't think every single one is scripted, but the ones that are obviously the most important,
Yeah.
such as the Super Bowl, or something like with the Olympics, even though that's another kind of, yeah, that's maybe a little tough because you have all of these nations and all of these competitors within each nation. And yeah, there'd almost be no point of decoding the fucking Olympics, right? The only thing that we would get from it is maybe like these opening ceremonies and closing ceremonies, which we know this year was fucking crazy. Like, I didn't see the whole opening ceremony, but did you see it at all? Any of
Oh,
it?
I haven't.
Oh yeah. They did like a trans Last Supper.
What?
Dude,
You're
it was
kidding
fucking
me.
I am not kidding you. It had like a bearded lady singing and it was bro, it's wild. It's such a circus. Um but getting on track because I know me and you could go forever on some of this stuff and we probably should
Yeah.
wrap this one up soon, but there's been a huge theme with France in my work and earlier you brought up the French Revolution like very quickly and I've just been thinking, like, with this Vatican saying that next year is the Jubilee and it's Pope Francis, and we had earlier this year the Francis Scott Key Bridge in
Yeah.
Baltimore came down, and we had Paris, France Summer Olympics. Then we had um, this one, well, the Chiefs are in Missouri, and they have St. Louis, named after King Louis, French king.
Yeah.
And then Louisiana has been a huge theme too. Not maybe as massive as some of the other things that have been going on the world stage, but the next Super Bowl is going to be in New Orleans, Louisiana. And the last time that New Orleans, Louisiana had a Super Bowl was 2012, which was the year of the dragon for the Baltimore Ravens.
Huh.
So there's so many weird connections that are going on with that, but like I've been realizing the theme of France, and I don't know exactly what's going on in France right now, but I've seen a lot of civil unrest for the last 4 or 5 years. Nothing like end timesy because they're still operating as a sophisticated society. But like every year we hear some big story about France, specifically Paris, having some protests and whatnot, whether it be because of retirement age or something like that. But it's kind of overlapping, right? When you look at the story of the American Revolution, the French Revolution, and the way that the people dealt with that moment with Marie Antoinette and Napoleon. I believe they even came out with a Napoleon movie recently with Joaquin Phoenix. The apex predator loves using that guy for almost everything.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, I'm not sure exactly where the stream of consciousness is going. It's just France has been a huge theme in my work. And I'm seeing there could be parallels where perhaps what was going down in France for their revolution is about to mirror to what's going on in the US right now with like an ultra totalitarian regime that is allowing crazy shit to happen, like with this immigration policy and then it leads to something where like the people just do not deal with their government anymore. Do you ever see there to be a case of like that, or do you think a revolution or a civil war is more likely?
Well, I mean, civil war, revolution. I mean, it's just there's going to be a war. I think that it's inevitable that there's a possibility that that comes out on the world stage.
Hmm.
Where will it start? Who knows? I think the U.S. is really in a position to have something like that happen. I,
Really?
yeah, I really do because of all the things that are going on, the colorful aspects of the U.S., the housing, just everything's just set up right now to blow up. I mean, the housing market in people can't afford to buy and they can't afford to sell. Right now in Florida with the two hurricanes, people don't even want to live there anymore because their houses have been flooded two
Yeah.
times. They're like, I'm out of here. They can't even, they're trying to reduce their house prices by 100 grand. They can't even sell them. Who does going to buy that shit, right?
Yeah.
So they're being, where are they going to go?
Hmm.
So the housing market, and then the housing market, the bubble's so high, and then the hyperinflation, and people losing their jobs, and so it's there's plenty of jobs out there. It's just people still are not really living the luxurious life that they once lived. They're struggling and stuff like that. So, but I think the U.S. could be the start of it all, but maybe not. Maybe it would be in Europe. I mean, consider that francium, the element francium, sits right after radium and right before radon, and
Mm.
that's element number 87. That's tied to Lucifer as well, and tied to Prometheus. So 88, 87, 86, these are all tied to the sun. So
Yeah. 86 is huge, dude, because we were talking about Stranger Things before, and I think there's a
massive.
very important reason why they ended well, why they made that season in the year 86.
Yeah.
Um, all right, brother, I think I do need to wrap this one up. It's
Yeah,
been like
let's
two
wrap
and
it
a
up,
half
man.
hours.
Yeah,
This
we've
was a
been going.
beautiful
This was a good,
conversation.
yeah, this was a great, we covered some pretty damn amazing topics. I'm sure everybody will really love this one. Uh, I really enjoyed this one. We had some really colorful conversations, good flow. So I'm pretty satisfied. So
100%, man.
let's talk 18 in the books. And it's been an honor and a pleasure, bro.
Yeah,
So,
man. Appreciate you. Grateful to reconnect.
yeah,
And
likewise.
we have the big 1-9 coming up then.
Yeah, we do. We have the 19 coming up. Yeah, which is
Powerful.
powerful, man. Yeah, the two numbers in numeral. That's the anode and the cathode, the battery coming up. So,
It sucks that we talk so much about AI because that would have been the perfect one to talk.
well, we can still jump into it, highlight a little
Yeah, of
more and
course.
go
Of,
deeper a
of
little bit.
course. Of
We'll see.
course. Yeah, maybe.
We'll see what kind of feedback. Matter of fact, I'll throw out there. Anybody listening to this, what would you like us to talk about? I like to bring people in. I like to hear what the crowd has to say, but what topics would you want Jordan and I to discuss for the Let's Talk number 19? I definitely will consider some of the topics that some of you out there, some of you great minds want us to discuss. Jordan, you open for that? I'm sure you are.
Yeah, or we could just do a live and kind of like launch the live with that, idea in mind.
Yeah, we can launch the live and then do comments at the same time. But
Yeah,
if
100%.
if you have a comment, if you have a topic you want us to talk about on Let's Talk 19, put it down in the comments below and let us know, and I'll take it into consideration. Or Jordan and I'll take it into consideration. So
Perfect. All right, brother. It's been amazing. Enjoy. Hope you have a beautiful rest of your day, and let's reconnect soon.
for
Much
sure, bro. All
love.
right, much love, man. Take care.
Take care.